Chapter 41, Rest and Recovery. Roughly half an hour later, the Chris finally arrived at the port. The massive crescent-shaped harbor was crowded with vessels of all shapes and sizes, a hive of maritime activity. Ships came and went in constant flow. It was a bustling spectacle. This was Huden Port City, one of the two major harbor cities of the Kingdom of Sisardo. The port boasted 19 large piers, split into freight and passenger docks. Docks 1 through 11 handled cargo, while docks 12 through 19 were reserved for passengers. Each dock had 8 berths, 152 berths in total. Huden had a population of over 800,000 and was divided into 3 districts: Coastal City, Central City, and the Outer City. The Coastal City encompassed the entire sweeping harbor and wharf area, spanning 8,300 meters along the pier line and extending 2,000 meters inland, home to around 300,000 residents. The Central City was the city's heart, containing the city lord's estate, the nobles' quarter, and the prestigious commercial district. It measured roughly 4,800 meters across and 3,500 meters deep, housing another 200,000. Towering cliffs surrounded both the coastal and central cities, forming a natural barrier. The outer city lay furthest inland, closest to Sisardo Island's dense interior. It included residential zones, lower-income neighborhoods, and standard shopping streets, stretching 7,200 meters by 6,300 meters and housing the remaining 300,000. Encircling it all was dense forest. Whoa, check out all these ships! Arlen leaned over the railing, his eyes wide with excitement as he surveyed the port, especially the few pirate ships brazenly cruising through the harbor. This place is huge and way more lively than Shiga Island, Gorbo added, clearly fascinated. It was his first time seeing such a bustling port. Hey, Dimitri, Oliver called out lazily, arms draped over the railing, twin katanas hanging from his belt. You look awfully familiar with this place. You've been here before. Yeah, wasn't it Captain Jaren who brought you? Asked Eridar, lounging near the prow with an arm around Millie and Mina's slender waists. Having seen modern coastal cities in his past life, this place didn't impress him much, though the exotic atmosphere, reminiscent of Earth's 16th or 17th century, was a refreshing twist. Dimitri nodded with a smile. Twice, with Sensei Jaren. Then, with a mischievous glint in his eye, he added, the second time, I saw a pirate crew with a bounty in the millions pick a fight with a merchant right here in port. They opened fire on the guy's cargo ship, and got the navy on their backs. 12 warships showed up and wiped them off the map. And not just them, every pirate crew within 50 nautical miles got caught up in it. Over 10 crews were annihilated, 7 or 8 crippled, more than 20 ships sunk, and over 1,000 pirates killed. 500 or 600 captured. Eridar burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. What a bunch of morons. Stirring up trouble this close to the East Blue Naval Fortress? They were asking for it and they got it. Serves the idiots right. There are always reckless fools in the world, people who don't know their limits. It's like someone with 100 million bounty attacking Marine HQ in the Grand Line with a rowboat and a cannon. That's not guts, that's suicide. Just like that clown back in Sabayati Archipelago who tried to kill Admiral Kizaru with a musket. Kizaru wasn't even interested in dealing with that trash until the idiot asked for it. Then, well, no one blamed Kizaru for sending him straight to hell. Guess the Navy really went all out to make an example of them, Arlen muttered, hitting the nail on the head. TCH dumbass, Oliver scoffed, rolling his eyes. Idiots, Gorbo added flatly, shaking his head. Dimitri chuckled, remembering how some of the surviving pirates were ranting about it in the bars. Yeah, a lot of them were furious. I remember some guys who barely escaped were cursing that crew to hell. Soon after, the Chris eased into Dock 16, slipping into berth 8. The deckhands got to work, anchors dropped, sails furled, and thick mooring ropes secured the ship to the massive dockside bollards. The gangplank dropped. Eridar was the first down, swaggering onto solid ground. Oliver and the others followed, laughing and chatting as the crew descended onto the stone pier, arms slung over each other's shoulders. No wonder this is the East Blue's busiest island. It's wild out here, one crewmate exclaimed. This is just one section of the coastal district, and it already outnumbers the entire population of Shiga Island. Man, it feels so good to be on land again. Having survived last night's brutal storm, the crew stomped the granite beneath their boots, breathing in the smells and sounds of civilization like it was a dream. All right. Eridar called, opening a wooden chest. Everyone else, here's 10,000 berries each. You're free to explore but be back on the ship by 9 AM the day after tomorrow. Got it. Long live the captain. You got it, Captain. Woohoo. The crew lined up eagerly to collect their spending money. Suddenly remembering something, Eridar raised his voice. Wait. Each team, leave 5 guys on ship watch. We don't want anyone sneaking off with the Chris. No need, Captain, Oliver interrupted lazily. I'll stay. Just bring me back some good booze from the island. Eridar gave him a long look, then nodded. All right. It's in your hands. No problem, Oliver replied, lifting his bottle in salute. Gorbo, your head chef. Take Millie and Mina with you to handle the supply run, fresh water, food, all that. Grab funds from Dmitri, Arlen ordered after a moment of thought. Then he turned to Eridar and Dmitri. Captain, Dmitri, we should hit the black market. We need to restock our ammunition. We lost 6 cannons in that storm last night. Sounds good to me, Eridar replied with a shrug. Glad I've got a smart first mate so I don't have to think too hard. No problem. 500,000 berries enough for you, Gorbo. Dmitri grinned, handing over 5 thick wads of bills. Gorbo's scarred face lit up. Plenty. Leave supplies and water to me. Thanks, first mate. Millie and Mina chimed in with beaming smiles. By noon the next day, the sun hung high in the sky, blazing down with oppressive heat. The temperature had easily climbed above 40 degrees Celsius. Eridar, Arlen, and Dmitri were strolling through the coastal city streets, all three wearing crisp white shirts that matched. Despite the sweltering heat, the city bustled with life. Crowds surged through the narrow streets, the air alive with the din of conversation and movement. It was a teeming scene, undeterred by the scorching midday sun. Bounty hunters and pirates walked by, weapons strapped across their backs. Sailors passed through, some gripping single-edged blades. Civilians bustled from shop to shop, enjoying a midday stroll. Occasionally, squads of 10 uniformed kingdom soldiers patrolled in formation. The shops lining the street were packed with goods, local snacks, fresh seafood, carved trinkets made from sea beast bones and monster fish, glittering jewelry, and old antiques. There were even stalls hawking swords, sabers, and other cold weapons, alongside all manner of wilderness and seafaring supplies. Most of it was run-of-the-mill stuff, not much in the way of fine merchandise, but enough to satisfy most customers. If someone was serious about buying quality gear, they'd head straight to the top-tier commercial district in Central City. There, you could find not only premium steel-forged blades, but even flintlock pistols and small-bore muzzle-loading cannons for sale. Arlen wiped the sweat from his brow, eyeing the scorching sun overhead. With heat like this, we should be holed up in an inn or chilling at a tavern. Yeah, Dmitri sighed contentedly, eyes squinting as if daydreaming. Kicking back with an ice-cold cocktail. Now that's the life. Great idea. Eridar's eyes lit up, and he smacked a fist into his palm. There's a tavern just around that corner. I saw it yesterday while passing by. For real. Arlen and Dmitri's eyes sparkled like they'd struck gold. In unison, they exclaimed, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Without another word, the two darted ahead like their pants were on fire. If the crowd hadn't been so dense, they'd have broken into a sprint. Oi, wait for me. Eridar blinked, momentarily stunned at their enthusiasm. He glanced up at the blazing sun, sweat beading on his forehead. Damn, it's hot as hell. Grumbling, he hurried to catch up. After walking about 100 meters, they turned a corner and there it was. Just 20 meters ahead, from behind a pair of wooden double doors, came the distinct thrum of lively music and rowdy chatter. A sign above the entrance bore 4 bold characters, the Frost Dance. Taverns were a dime a dozen throughout the port city of Huden, especially in the coastal and outer city districts. But most were tucked away in less visible spots. Too many pirates frequented them, and drawing attention in a Navy-patrolled zone was asking for trouble. After all, the 17th Marine Branch Fortress was less than 100 kilometers away. With a fast ship, they could be here in no time. Ha! Found it! Arlen beamed and pushed open the doors without hesitation, quickly vanishing inside. Dmitri followed eagerly. These two. Eridar sighed and shook his head. Don't they remember who the captain is around here? Still, despite the muttered complaint, Eridar picked up the pace and stepped through the doors behind them. The moment he entered, the full force of the tavern's chaos hit him, the roar of voices, pounding music, and a thick, electric atmosphere. The space was huge, packed to the rafters. Pirates, bounty hunters, loners, merchants, everyone was laughing, drinking, arm wrestling, and brawling. At the center was a 3-meter-wide circular stage where 2 curvy women in skimpy outfits were dancing around steel poles, hips swaying to the beat. Over 100 people surrounded them, ogling like their eyes might pop out. At the far end stood a larger rectangular stage 10 meters long, 15 wide, where a 6-person band was mid-performance. One sang passionately while the others played backup. The tune was a raucous, familiar anthem well known throughout the East Blue. Then the scent hit him, a pungent cocktail of body odor, sweat, spilled booze, and greasy food. Eridar wrinkled his nose involuntarily. He turned toward the stage and eyed the eccentric-looking band. Not bad, he thought to himself. The ship could use a house band. Should I recruit them? But before the idea could fully take shape, he spotted Arlen and Dmitri already sipping from frosty glasses. He abandoned the thought immediately and pushed through the crowd toward the bar. It was packed easily, over 500 patrons, not counting the private booths on the second floor. Way too crowded, he muttered. Gimme your signature cocktail. Make it ice cold. Slumping onto the stool beside Dmitri, Aridar slapped the counter. Coming right up. One frost dance. That'll be 300 berries. The middle-aged bartender didn't miss a beat, his hands flying as he began mixing. Aridar shot a sideways glance at Dmitri. Dmitri. Slap. Dmitri didn't say a word. One hand raised his drink to his lips, the other reached into his shoulder bag and slapped 5 crisp 100-berry notes onto the marble counter. Boss, came a low voice from a nearby couch. A wiry young man with spiky hair leaned in close to a burly bald man with a thick gold chain around his neck. That guy's loaded. I saw into his bag, he's carrying at least tens of thousands of berries. The bald man's eyes gleamed. He took a slow sip from his bottle, then beckoned the scrawny youth closer with a tattooed arm that bore a scorpion design. You sure, Skinny? Know them? Positive. I saw it with my own eyes. And I've never seen them around before, they must be new in town. Skinny shook his head. He was a regular in the coastal city's bars, he could spot newcomers instantly. And the way Aridar ordered gave them away. Locals would have just asked for a frost dance or picked something else entirely. At 500 berries a glass, the tavern's signature cocktail wasn't cheap. Even pirates only splurged on one when they hit it big. For 500 berries, you could buy 10 bottles of malt beer or 5 of the popular Willy Brand brew. 200 berries got you a bottle of cheap sake, enough to get a decent buzz. For the strong of liver, maybe even a full night's worth. Heh heh. 3 fresh-faced rookies, the bald man sneered, rising to his feet and grabbing his bottle. Come on, let's go say hi. Heh heh. Behind him, 5 or 6 men stood up, Skinny included. Grins twisted across their faces as they followed the bald brute toward the bar. Hey, hey. A heavy hand clapped down on Dmitri's shoulder. Dmitri was nursing a drink, eyes glued to the pole-dancing woman flaunting her curves in the center of the tavern. His mind wandered a little until he felt that hand land on him. He turned his head to find a burly bald man looming over him. The guy's right hand still rested on his shoulder. Dmitri blinked in surprise, he didn't recognize this guy at all. What do you want? He asked, frowning. Hi. Aridar and Arlen turned at the sound of Dmitri's voice. They saw that behind the 3 of them now stood a scrawny punk with a rooster comb hairstyle, flanked by 5 hulking goons. Every one of them wore a wicked, leering grin. "Heh, nothing much," said the bald man, flashing what he clearly thought was a friendly smile. "Just wanted to get acquainted." Ugh. The 3 exchanged a glance. They seemed to understand exactly what was happening, but they were pirates. The freest people on the seas. "We don't know you. And we don't want to," Aridar replied bluntly, curling his lip. "Yeah, not interested," Dmitri added with equal disdain, brushing the bald guy's hand off his shoulder. The bald man's face darkened. He hadn't expected this level of disrespect. These 2 guys, they look familiar. Where have I seen them before? The rooster-haired thug squinted at Aridar and Arlen's faces, something about them triggering a sense of déjà vu. But he couldn't place them. One thing was for sure, this was their first time here. No one walked into this place without knowing who his boss was, unless they were new pirates, or worse, big-name pirates. A chill ran down the punk's spine as he stared at Aridar's expressionless face. Something about him felt off, and dangerous. "You've got a hell of an attitude," one of the other goons, round-faced and broad as a boulder, snapped, pointing his finger at Aridar. "Let me teach you some manners." He raised his fist, about to throw a punch. "Oi, seriously?" Arlen sneered. "Picking a fight, are we? Against a bunch of low-tier thugs?" Aridar's voice was cool and steady. "Before you swing that fist, think carefully. Raising it means you're challenging me. It means you're ready for war. Are you?" He fixed his gaze on the guy's outstretched finger. "Also, I hate being pointed at. If you want to keep that finger, take it back." The air in the tavern instantly shifted. Tension crackled between the 2 sides. War. The round-faced thug froze. He was used to brawling with rival gangs, sure, but this guy talked like he was about to start a war. That word stunned him. "Maru, drop it," the bald man snapped, eyes narrowing as he restrained his underling. He wasn't stupid. War wasn't a word you tossed around lightly. Only someone with real authority, second in command or higher, could speak that boldly. Just who were these men? Gangsters? Merchant enforcers? Or pirates? Wait a minute, bald head, scorpion tattoo on his right arm, that thick gold chain around his neck, isn't he? Yeah. That's Meng, one of the top 3 bosses in the coastal district. No way. That kid talked back to Meng and walked away from it. He's got a death wish. Wait, look at how calm those 3 are. They're not scared at all. Are they pirates? Must be. The surrounding patrons, mostly regulars of the Frost Dance Tavern, fell quiet. Many were locals who immediately recognized the bald man. The rowdy chatter died down, replaced by hushed murmurs backgrounded by the tavern's pulsing music. Bald Scorpion Mang, one of the 3 crime lords of the coastal district. Violent, but not reckless. Cunning, ruthless, and backed by a noble family from Central City. Rumor had it he was in bed with a pirate crew and controlled a fifth of the coastal district with over 100 men under his command. His favorite pastime? Extorting wealthy out-of-towners. Are you a pirate? Mang suddenly asked. That line, Eridar's warning, had struck a nerve. It echoed an infamous line from the Pirate King himself, Gold Roger. Though the wording was different, the meaning was the same. The moment you draw your gun, you're picking a fight with me. You ready for war? 24 years ago, Roger had said it to a fearsome pirate in the New World with a 200 million bounty. That pirate's reply? 1 bullet. The result? He and his 7 allied pirate crews, nearly 10,000 men, were annihilated. It had rocked the world. Gulp. B-boss. They are pirates. I know who he is, the rooster-haired punk stammered, drenched in sweat, teeth chattering as he tried to speak. Oh. Arlen let out a knowing hum, glanced at the trembling thug, and turned to Eridar. Captain, looks like our bounty posters are finally out. We just haven't seen a news coup yet. Captain? Mang's heart skipped a beat. He's the captain. And judging by the scrawny one's reaction, a big one, too. But, there was no such young pirate in the East Blue, was there? Captain of the Chris Pirates Golden Ring, Chris T. Eridar. B bounty, 40 million berries. The rooster-haired thug quivered, pointing at the gold ring in Eridar's ear. Mang's face went white. First mate of the Chris Pirates, 2nd Division Commander Blue Hair Gilbert Arlen. B bounty, 20 million. Mang's forehead beaded with sweat. His eyes jumped from the gold earring to Arlen's unmistakable blue hair. Even the first mates here. His men were on the verge of panic. The round-faced thug looked like he was about to wet himself. 40 million. Do they even understand what that means? The previous highest bounty in the East Blue was barely 23 million. And this was their first bounty already at 40 million. That alone proved just how dangerous this man was. Even his officers had starting bounties far higher than most East Blue pirates. In these waters, a bounty over 10 million earned you the title of Great Pirate. One of these guys could wipe out Mang's entire crew without breaking a sweat. Oh, 40 million? That high? Eridar raised his brows, clearly surprised, but his ego was thoroughly gratified. He hadn't expected his first bounty to top even Luffy's from the original story. 40 million berries. He'd only guessed he'd get 30 million max. And even Arlen had been given 20 million. Eridar suspected Oliver was probably wanted too and likely not far behind. Oi, chicken head. Who else got a bounty? Eridar asked with playful curiosity. Yeah, who else? Dimitri chimed in enthusiastically, though deep down he knew there was no way he'd be on that list. Arlen remained silent, still basking in the joy of his newly issued 20 million berries bounty. And then there's your crew's dual-blade swordsman Oliver. Also worth 20 million berries. The scrawny man shrank his head down, answering timidly. What? Arlen shouted, unable to accept it. That lazy bum has the same bounty as me? Based on what exactly? Aye. The scrawny man flinched, baffled by the sudden outburst. Crash. The bar fell silent. Every patron nearby froze in place. Some even stumbled back in shock, pale-faced. A rookie with a debut bounty this high? Just how dangerous is he? He's the most fearsome pirate in the East Blue, that's him. 40 million berries. No way. Did the Navy mess up? What the hell did they do? Ha ha ha. That makes 3 of us with bounties now. Our crew's total reward is up to 80 million berries. Eridar downed his frost dance in a single gulp, laughing heartily. Not far from them, a man in a dark green coat sat on a couch, hood pulled low over his face, back turned to Eridar and company. Flanking him were 2 others, also hooded, one clad in black, the other in grey. Despite the loud, thumping music, they spoke in hushed tones. Boss, the man with the gold ring in his ear, that's the one who killed Nadari Mori, the man in black said, holding a glass and glancing toward the laughing Eridar. This guy, Eridar, he's strong, the man in grey murmured. Our Navy contacts confirmed he overpowered Nadari Mori the entire fight. Even I would have struggled with that. But what's he doing here? According to their route, they should have been approaching Logue Town. Not surprising, the green-cloaked man replied calmly, sipping from his drink. That freak storm, one of those once-in-a-decade tempests, probably threw them off course. Which would also explain why the kingdom of Cisardo has suddenly seen a spike in population these past 2 days. Could he interfere with our operation? The man in black asked. Hard to say. But the Navy's Operation Weed Killer has already begun. Their East Blue Sweep fleet will arrive within 2 days, tops, and they'll be docking here soon. The green-coated leader shook his head slowly, his voice steady. That means we have to move no later than the day after tomorrow. No problem there. But what about Eridar? If the Navy finds out he's on this island, they might send a full unit to hunt him down. That could expose us, especially with that sharp-eyed vice admiral at the local branch, said the man in grey, turning slightly to reveal a sickly pale half-face. You want me to kill him? The man in black asked, his palm pressing flat against the coffee table. Don't be reckless, the green-cloaked leader snapped, brushing his hand away. When his hand lifted, a perfect imprint of his palm lines and all was left embedded in the table. Eridar's strong. Unless we both strike at once, killing him quietly is near impossible and the collateral would be immense, the man in grey explained. Even if the Navy does try to capture him here, it won't be a subtle operation. And don't forget he's not alone. The Chris pirates are all here. If a battle breaks out in the city, with his power level, the coastal district would be reduced to rubble. The kingdom of Cisardo won't let that happen. Unless he crosses a line that both Cisardo and the Navy can't ignore, but I doubt he's that foolish, added the leader in green, calmly refilling his glass. Meanwhile, Eridar had no intention of starting trouble. He was about to let Mang and the others go. When suddenly, a middle-aged man leapt forward, aiming a flintlock pistol straight at him. Chris T. Eridar the gold ring. 40 million berries. And Gilbert Arlen the blue-haired swordsman. I've got you both in my sights, so don't move a muscle, the man barked. Eridar, his crew, Mang, and his group, and even the three hooded figures all stared in stunned silence. Haha. You're finished. No pirate escapes sharpshooter Vic once I've got my sights on them. With your heads, I'll collect 60 million berries and become famous across the East Blue. Vic grinned, his face stretching with delight, misreading the silence as awe. Idiot, Mang muttered, staring at him like he was brain dead. If guns were that effective, the East Blue wouldn't be crawling with pirates. Is this guy for real? Dimitri sighed, palm to forehead, utterly speechless. That moron, growled the man in black across the room, clearly itching to slap the fool dead. You bastard, do you have a death wish? Eridar's expression darkened. I just came here for a drink. Why the hell do clowns keep jumping out to piss me off? Your life's in my hands and you still talk big? Fine, then die. Vic sneered, pulling the trigger. Bang. A flash burst from the muzzle. Behind Eridar, a bottle of Chikivi whiskey on the bar shelf shattered. What? Vic stammered, dumbfounded. His aim wasn't bad, he could hit a leaf at 100 paces. But they were only 10 meters apart. How did he miss? TCH. No wonder he's worth 40 million. Mang sucked in a breath. He had seen it clearly. Eridar tilted his head just enough to dodge the shot. And there was no way that had been an accident. Impossible. Vic howled, firing off the rest of his rounds. Bang. 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 All 4 bullets missed. He's trying to kill someone. Gunfire. Run for it. Panic erupted across the bar. Some patrons and waiters fled in terror, but others stuck around too curious to leave now that the show had started. Chapter 45-45, The Revolutionary. Eridar sat expressionless in his seat, though behind him, the liquor shelf was a wreck, bottles shattered, alcohol spilling everywhere, its rich aroma thick in the air. He spoke in a low, cold voice. You've pissed me off, now die. The moment the words left his lips, he vanished. Where did he? Vic, still loading his bullets, suddenly realized the man in front of him was gone. Then, he felt a heavy weight on his shoulder, and a voice whispered from right behind him. Didn't you say you had me in your sights? Vic froze. Cold sweat soaked through his back in an instant. That voice, there was no mistake. It belonged to his target. But how? The man had appeared behind him like a ghost. He hadn't even caught a blur of movement. No one with that kind of speed, no, there was no way he could fight someone like this. Someone who can't even see his own enemy clearly has lived far too long. Better you die now. Eridar, now standing behind him, placed his left hand on Vic's shoulder. His right hand rose, fingers pressed tightly together like a blade, ready to drive a palm strike into Vic's spine. Smack. Eridar's wrist was caught mid-strike, gripped by another hand, large and calloused. He looked up, frowning. A man stood before him, clad in a dark green coat, hood drawn low to obscure his face. Who are you? Eridar asked coldly. The man lifted his head slightly, revealing a red square tattoo on the left side of his face. A revolutionary, he replied. In that instant, Eridar's pupils shrank to pinpricks. His breath caught in his throat. It's you. Oh, the man chuckled, seeing the shock in Eridar's eyes. Looks like you recognize me. Mind doing me a favor and letting this guy go? Eridar inhaled slowly, trying to steady the storm inside him. With forced calm, he said mockingly, what a rare honor, meeting someone like you in a place like this. Of course I'll give you that favor. though, this idiot. He one of yours? He's not, the man replied, glancing casually at the trembling Vic. I just don't want any trouble breaking out these next few days. Truthfully, he didn't want to save this idiot. But he had to. Not because of any connection, just because of what would happen if he didn't. Here in this city, fights, even deaths, weren't uncommon. As long as it wasn't public, the military usually looked the other way. But if someone was killed in broad daylight, in a crowded public setting, the army had to investigate, even if only to maintain appearances. If Vic had died here, right in front of so many people, the army would intervene without a doubt. And once they started investigating, it wouldn't take long to uncover Eridar's identity. A pirate with a 40 million berry bounty? That wasn't something that could be swept under the rug. That level of threat would force the kingdom's military to notify the navy. And once the navy found out that the highest bounty in the East Blue had surfaced, they'd launch a full-blown operation. The kingdom of Cisardo might even allow marines to deploy troops into the city. And even if they didn't, they'd still conduct a thorough investigation. And that could expose his presence. Compared to that risk, some small-time pirate wasn't worth the trouble. So that's what this is about. Just these next couple days, Eridar now understood. A revolutionary, here for revolutionary purposes. According to the reports, this man had already toppled several kingdoms. More importantly, his ideology was a direct threat to the world government, so much so that they labeled him the world's most dangerous criminal. Even though he hadn't appeared much in the original reports, and his abilities were still a mystery, the few actions he had taken proved one thing clearly. This man was incredibly powerful, at least on par with a marine admiral. Eridar knew he was no match for him. More than that, this man was far too dangerous. He'd dedicated himself to fighting the world government, while Eridar's goals were the exact opposite. Without another word, Eridar let go of Vic's shoulder. The man with the tattoo also released his grip on Eridar's wrist. Vic collapsed to the floor, soaked in cold sweat. Let's go, Eridar ordered. He swept a cold glance across the remaining patrons of the bar, then motioned to Arlen and Dmitri, who had been standing nearby on high alert. Together, they quickly exited. Interesting guy, the hooded man murmured, watching Eridar's retreating figure. His eyes narrowed slightly, then he too turned and left. Eridar and his crew said nothing as they walked. Heads down, they moved quickly through the streets. Only when they'd left that block did Arlen finally break the silence. Captain, he asked, puzzled, who was that man? You looked wary of him. I could feel an insane amount of pressure just being near him, Dmitri muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. A revolutionary, Eridar finally exhaled, his voice grave. A man the world government calls the world's most dangerous criminal. What? Arlen and Dmitri both gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. It was him. Yes, the man shrouded in mystery. The one who stands at the very top of the world government's most wanted list. Eridar's face darkened as he spoke the name. Monkey D. Dragon. What do we do now? Dmitri asked, his voice low, uncertain. We head back. Gather everyone. We leave by sundown, no later. Sundown? You mean tonight? That's soon. Arlen asked, stunned. Can't we just steer clear of him? Why the rush? Eridar stared hard at Dmitri, then said softly. Because this country is about to be overthrown. What? Arlen could hardly believe his ears. But, this is one of the largest nations in the East Blue. It houses the biggest marine base in the region. There's no way. You underestimate him, Eridar snapped. You think the man branded enemy of the world by the world government can't topple a single East Blue nation? He let out a cold laugh. If he wanted to destroy this place, this entire marine stronghold, he could do it. Alone. Alone. What is he, a monster? Arlen and Dmitri were both shaken. An East Blue kingdom with over 200,000 soldiers. A military force strong enough to crush any rival nation in the region. What kind of person could single-handedly bring all of that down? A monster, yes, Eridar murmured, voice hollow. And that kind of power was exactly what he dreamed of. Before long, Eridar, Arlen, and Dmitri had returned to the dock and boarded the Chris. Beneath the main mast, Oliver was lying back in a large armchair, shirtless and with his eyes closed. To his left rested two finely crafted katana, while on his right sat a small round table bearing 3 bottles of premium rum, 2 already opened, 1 completely emptied. Tap, 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 tap. The approaching footsteps stirred Oliver from his drowsy state. He cracked one eye open, glanced lazily in their direction, and, recognizing familiar figures, slowly sat up. His posture was relaxed, but there was a flicker of something unusual in his expression as he asked, "Huh? You guys are back already?" "We've got a problem," Eridar replied sharply, shooting him an irritated look before turning to Dmitri. "Dmitri, send the emergency assembly signal." On it, Dmitri nodded and headed up toward the quarterdeck. Oliver's eyes widened, and he leapt to his feet. Emergency signal. Don't tell me, the Marines on the island are coming after us. No, Arlen said grimly, face darkening. It's worse. Worse. A trace of alarm flashed across Oliver's face. The island was crawling with thousands of Marines and dozens of warships, including a vice admiral, rear admirals, captains, each a formidable force. If they were being hunted, it would be a full-blown crisis. One that could annihilate everyone except the captain and the highest-ranking officers. But something worse than that? That meant everyone was in danger. Even the captain. Even the corps officers. Eridar's voice turned cold. This whole country and the East Blue's regional marine headquarters could be going down. Oliver's expression shifted to pure shock. You're serious, he gasped. If something happened to the Kingdom of Sasardo, one of the largest nations in the East Blue, and to Marine Base 17, the command center for all East Blue operations, that would shake the entire world. Sure, the East Blue was considered the weakest of the four seas, but Sasardo was a major member nation of the world government. And the 17th Division base was no minor outpost either. It was the strategic hub for the entire region's navy presence. Even if not as elite as a Grand Line fortress, it wasn't weak by any stretch. If both a world government member nation and a vice admiral grade marine base were to fall at once, it'd be a headline-making catastrophe. Not just for the navy, the world government itself would be forced into massive retaliation. Luckily, Gorbo's crew already stocked up on supplies, Arlen said with a slightly eased tone, nodding toward several crates and cannons on the deck. And the 6 black market cannons and their ammo arrived this morning. If we have to set sail now, we're covered. Fwee. 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 3 bursts of light shot into the sky. Pop. Pop. Pop, each exploding into the shimmering image of a skull and crossed swords wrapped in golden rings. The skull insignia was unmistakable, the Jolly Roger of the Chris Pirates. Meanwhile, on the east end of the coastal city, a broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his face was leading 2 stunning twin women and 7 or 8 crew members down a market street, arms loaded with goods. Suddenly, one of the men paused, eyes scanning the sky. Spotting the glowing symbol overhead, he nearly dropped what he was carrying. Captain! Look up! What? Stop overreacting already, the scar-faced man grumbled, clearly annoyed until he looked up himself. Shit! Emergency signal! Move! Back to the docks! Round up everyone nearby! He bolted. The twin women and the rest of the crew immediately followed suit, breaking into a sprint without a second word. You two check the nearby alley bars. They're probably still drinking, one twin shouted over her shoulder to a pair of crewmen carrying lighter loads. Got it, boss lady! The 2 buzzcut men scampered off in the opposite direction. Similar scenes played out all across the coastal city. Wherever the glowing Jolly Roger appeared overhead, crew members dropped what they were doing and rushed to the docks or went to alert others. By 3:40 in the afternoon, the once empty Chris was bustling with life. The deck was crowded with crew members and piled high with gear and supplies. Arlen, Oliver, and Gorbo stood at the bow, tallying head counts. 1st Division, assembled! Arlen shouted. 2nd Division, all here! Oliver called. 3rd Division, ready! Gorbo announced. Navigation and finance teams accounted for. Dimitri added. At the prow, Eridar looked down at the gathered crew and bellowed, raise the sails. Prepare for departure. Aye, Captain, came the booming reply from the whole crew. Whump! The mooring lines were loosed, the anchor lifted, and the massive sails unfurled. The Chris, a triple-mast warship with a wolf's head prow, began to glide away from the docks. Far above, atop the highest rooftop overlooking the port, 3 mysterious men in long cloaks stood watching. The one in black spoke first. Boss, how do you know they won't interfere? Yeah, the man in grey added. Newcomers like that, especially strong ones, usually don't fear anything. The leader, wearing a deep green coat, stepped forward and replied in a calm, indifferent tone, A true warrior isn't just defined by strength, but by wisdom and an instinctive awareness of danger. Some may seem eccentric, but that's often a mark of those most dangerous. The men in black and grey gave each other a strange look but said nothing more. They just stood there, eyes fixed on the giant ship as it slowly disappeared over the horizon. Truth be told, they didn't understand a word of what their boss had just said. It sounded deep. Maybe too deep. So they played it safe and kept their mouths shut. April 28, 1514 of the Sea Circle calendar. At precisely 10 p.m., all 6 major cities of the Kingdom of Sasardo in the East Blue erupted in simultaneous uprisings branded as a revolution. Nearly half of the royal army, over 200,000 strong, defected on the spot. 4 of the 6 cities fell without resistance, seized within moments. The remaining 2, Huden port city and the royal capital, Sasapa, fought through a brutal night of combat. Revolutionary forces clashed with the kingdom's military and elite palace guards, laying waste to nearly half the cities in mere hours. By 9 a.m. the next morning, both had fallen. By noon, the entire royal family and over half the ministers of Sisardo were executed by public beheading in the central plaza of Saisapa. Thus, the kingdom of Sisardo ceased to exist, reduced to nothing more than a footnote in history. And further south, on Sisardo Island, the Navy's 17th branch fortress was obliterated by a mysterious individual. The entire fortress was leveled. Vice Admiral Rook and his 2 rear admirals, 8 captains, and thousands of sailors were annihilated. Dozens of warships were sunk to the ocean floor. What puzzled many was how the citizens of Sisardo reacted to the uprising. Rather than resist, they welcomed the rebels, even aiding them transporting supplies, ammunition, and wounded soldiers voluntarily. Reported by Moore, reporter for Lightshore News. Somewhere in the vast waters of the East Blue, a massive, triple-mast wolf-head warship sailed steadily across calm seas. Aboard the Chris, sunlight bathed the deck in warmth, but none of the 5 gathered there felt it. They sat silently in deck chairs, each reading the morning paper, their faces dark with disbelief. The headline was as shocking as it was unreal. Of course, it had already been 3 days since they'd left Huden Port City, but the news still hit like a thunderclap. After a long silence, Eridar finally opened his mouth, speaking with a tone laced with dread. No wonder they're called the Revolutionary Army. Just one night, and they toppled one of the East Blue's largest kingdoms. Eridar had seen Sisardo's prosperity firsthand. Even its black market was monitored by royal agents. Its power was unquestionable. And yet, that very same kingdom had fallen overnight. The entire royal bloodline wiped out. That kind of force was terrifying. They must have been preparing for this for a long time, Eridar continued. Now I get why that guy stopped me from killing anyone back there. But... He paused, brows furrowed. He was never one to lash out at the Navy directly. Why did he go so far this time? Why kill so many? Why destroy an entire Navy branch base himself? A single person flattened the 17th branch. Gorbo's voice cracked. Seriously? Just one guy? Who the hell is he? He wasn't overly concerned with Sisardo's collapse. What shook him was the idea that someone could wipe out an entire Navy fortress, one staffed by a vice admiral, 2 rear admirals, 8 captains, and thousands of personnel, not to mention the fleet. He didn't want to believe it. To him, people like that just didn't exist. After all, the strongest person Gorbo had ever seen was Eridar. Born and raised in the East Blue, his worldview was understandably limited. The Revolutionary Army. No wonder the world government fears them, said Arlen, voice low and heavy. It's the first time I've seen what one of the world's top powers is really capable of. Whether on an individual or organizational level, the might they displayed was chilling. One man leveled a vice admiral-class fortress. Their forces toppled a kingdom of millions overnight. That kind of power was monstrous. He. This world is just too damn interesting. To think there are still monsters like that out there, he. Oliver tossed the paper to the deck and ran a hand through his hair, chuckling softly. He was stunned, sure, but not afraid. As a swordsman, this only lit a fire in him. He wanted to fight that mystery man. He wanted to get strong enough to stand in that ring. Dmitri, on the other hand, was still shaken. That man, he'd once stood face to face with him. Captain? Is the Grand Line filled with monsters like that? Not exactly, Eridar scratched his head with a grimace. But yet, guys on that level aren't that rare either. He started counting on his fingers. There's Fleet Admiral Sengoku, Marine Hero Garp. Then there's Black Arm Zephyr, former Admiral. The current 3 Admirals, Akainu Sakazuki, Kizuru Borsellino, Aokiji Kyuzan. Plus a dozen or 2 top-tier Vice Admirals. And then there's the 7 Warlords of the Sea, a third power on the global stage. And the Emperor's Whitebeard, red-haired Shanks, Big Mom, Kaido. Every one of their commanders and top officers are monsters in their own right. Hell, a lot of pirates in the New World are at least as strong as a Vice Admiral. As for the Revolutionary Army, Eridar added, his voice growing serious, they're shrouded in secrecy. No one knows their full strength. But they exist solely to oppose the world government, so they're not our problem. Not yet. And finally, the world government itself, with over 170 member nations, founded 800 years ago by 20 ambitious kings. It's the single most powerful force in the world. They've got weapons and warriors hidden from the world. No one knows the true extent of their power. The Navy? That's just their enforcement arm. The more Eridar explained, the more solemn he became. He'd never really considered it before, but when you thought about it, the world government was terrifying. Especially the power it kept hidden in the shadows. Power no one had seen, no one could predict. The kind of power that made the entire world dance on a leash. After all, who knew what secrets a force that had lasted 800 years might be hiding? Even if it were in decline, even if it had weakened. An ancient camel is still larger than a horse. As Eridar ticked off names and titles, Oliver and the others grew darker and darker in the face. Holy crap, they thought. We've been living in a kiddie pool. Still, none of them felt the urge to back down. They'd set sail. There was no turning back now. A man doesn't flinch in the face of power. He rises to meet it. Anything less, and he's no man. Just a coward. In this age, true men set sail. They challenge the seas, clash with titans. Live for their dreams and die on their feet. That's what it means to be a real man. Captain, Logtown is just up ahead, said Dmitri, adjusting his straw hat as he peered through a handheld telescope, scanning the island a few nautical miles away. Yeah, I know. Logtown, the town where it all begins and ends. The birthplace of the Pirate King. We've arrived. Chris T. Eridar dropped his usual playful smirk, his face turning stoic as his gaze fell upon the island town. This town was legendary, both in Eridar's past life and this world, a place etched into history as the stage for the birth and death of a king. For Eridar, it was the one place in the East Blue he'd always dreamed of visiting. Even if he had no desire to become the Pirate King himself, as a pirate, not witnessing Logtown with his own eyes would have been a lifelong regret. Captain, there are so many pirate ships docked in Logtown. Dmitri exclaimed, still glued to his telescope. What? Eridar grabbed a scope of his own and aimed it at the port. His brows furrowed as confusion clouded his expression. This couldn't be right. Why were there so many pirate ships? Through the lens, he counted dozens of ships moored along the port, many of them flying the skull and crossbones. At least 8 or 9 different pirate crews were represented, and the rest seemed to be merchant vessels. Logtown was right at the entrance to the Grand Line from the East Blue. Surely this should be a heavily guarded marine stronghold. So why were all these pirate ships docked so peacefully? A key location like this, the Marines should have heavy forces stationed here, Dmitri muttered, equally puzzled. Hearing this exchange, Arlen frowned in thought, then offered a theory. Maybe Logtown was once a major marine stronghold, but after the start of the Great Pirate Era, the sudden influx of pirates heading for the Grand Line overwhelmed the defenses. Over time, what was once a well-guarded base turned into a pirate hotspot. That actually makes sense. Eridar's eyes lit up with recognition. In the original story, the highest-ranking marine in Logtown was Smoker, the user of the smoke fruit. Before he took command, this place was already swarming with pirates similar to Mocktown in the Grand Line, on Jaya Island. That's where Bellamy the Hyena made his debut. He reasoned it out further, with the Marines stretched thin dealing with the Grand Line, the New World, and the other 3 seas, they were constantly short-handed. Headquarters and branch bases alike didn't have enough high-ranking officers to station here. Weaker officers could barely keep up with the East Blue's sudden surge of pirates, and sending stronger ones to such a low-threat sea would have been a waste of resources. Especially when the Marines were already complaining about lack of manpower. They'd rather assign their top fighters to the New World to suppress the big names out there. So the mess in Logtown had just persisted. It wasn't until the seas began to stabilize thanks to the balance of the 3 great powers that the Marines finally sent Smoker to take control. The reasoning was clear. First, Smoker had trained under former Admiral Black Arm Zephyr. As a Logia user with the smoke fruit, he was more than capable of suppressing the pirates of the East Blue. Pirates without haki stood no chance against a Logia user, and even the few martial arts masters stronger than him physically couldn't land a hit. Second, Smoker was a known maverick, a lone wolf who constantly disobeyed orders. But his Logia abilities and growing reputation made him too valuable to discard. Admiral Aokiji even supported him. The Marines couldn't punish him without risking backlash, and with Logtown in need of a powerhouse, they figured, out of sight, out of mind. Third, Smoker was born in Logtown. He knew the place inside and out. That made him one of the best candidates to take command here. No Marines? Even better, Oliver said lazily, leaning on the railing. We weren't planning on fighting them head-on anyway. That last skirmish was just for show to make sure the Navy noticed us. Ha! Then let's rest up here a bit, and after that it's the Grand Line. Dmitri grinned with excitement. And we can finally pick up the supplies we couldn't get back at Huden's coastal city, added Gorbo with a nod. Not long after, the Chris sailed into Logtown's port. Compared to the other pirate vessels, none of which were even 100 meters long, the Chris was a beast. The battleship towered over them in length, width, and height. Pirates loitering aboard their own ships gawked, mouths agape, staring up at the massive vessel. That's a big ship, whose crew is that? The Jolly Roger, looks familiar. Wait, that's the Chris pirates. The ones with a debut bounty of 80 million berries. That's East Blue's number 1, the Golden Ring himself, Chris T. Eridar, worth 40 million. They're here too. Are they heading for the Grand Line, the Sea of Devils? Whispers spread like wildfire across the harbor. Pirates and merchants alike stared at the Chris pirates' flag with a storm of emotions: fear, envy, awe, and disbelief. But not a single ship dared block their way. Names carry weight. So do reputations. The Navy wasn't stupid. There was a reason this crew had earned such a massive bounty right out of the gate. It wasn't luck. Sure, a bounty doesn't always reflect a pirate's personal strength. The world government and navy determine bounties based on the threat level someone poses to their regime or the world at large. But one thing was certain: truly powerful pirates always carried sky-high bounties. Even Nico Robin, labeled the Devil Child, was given a bounty of 79 million berries at just 8 years old. Not because of combat ability, but because her knowledge of the poneglyphs posed a dire threat to the government. She held the potential to uncover the Void Century, a truth buried for 800 years, fiercely protected and erased by the world government. That stretch of lost history represents their greatest taboo, a line that cannot be crossed. And yet, even with the magnitude of that threat, the bounty placed on Robin never surpassed 100 million. To the world government, the danger she represented didn't outweigh the immediate threat posed by a supernova with a bounty in the 9 figures. For most pirates, after all, a higher bounty generally means greater strength. Chapter 49-49, The Marines Attack. Eridar and his crew stood before the port of Logetown. A triangular archway loomed overhead, bearing the word Logetown. As he looked up at it, Eridar couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. Finally, a location straight out of the original story. Man, this place is lively. Eridar marveled, scanning the bustling streets beyond the arch. Shops of all kinds lined both sides, with porches out front and crowds weaving in and out. If it weren't for the sheer number of guys slinging swords, packing guns, and dressing like unhinged punks, you'd never guess this was a pirate haven. I thought this place was supposed to be crawling with pirates. Why does it feel like a festival? Dimitri scratched his head in confusion. He'd never set foot here before. Back when he was sailing with Captain Jaren, they'd always skipped Logetown and headed straight into the Grand Line. As the group chatted, they made their way deeper into town. The streets grew even broader and more packed. And sure enough, the deeper they went, the more pirates there were. Taking it all in, Eridar grinned and waved his hand, signaling for his crew to go enjoy themselves. Before long, only 7 of them were left: Eridar, Arlen, Oliver, Gorbo, Dimitri, and the sisters Millie and Mina. Are pirates around here always this well-behaved? Oliver muttered, scratching his head and eyeing the crowd suspiciously. He'd already seen dozens, maybe hundreds of snarling, cutthroat types just on this one street. And that wasn't even counting the ones lurking elsewhere. He hadn't even finished his sentence. Wham! A man went flying and landed hard, bruised and bloodied, right in the middle of the road. A few pirates with swords slung across their backs came rushing after him and began kicking and punching him mercilessly. In less than a minute, they'd beaten the man to death. 2 of them dragged the corpse off without a word, while the rest calmly pulled out mops, rags, and buckets to scrub away the blood. But the strangest thing? Nobody around seemed to care. The locals glanced, shrugged, and went about their business as if it were just another Tuesday. Not even a proper crowd gathered. The group stared, stunned, speechless. What was this place? Judging by those faces, this must be your first time in Logetown, huh? An old voice interrupted from the side. It was raspy but carried a light chuckle. Turning, they saw an elderly man no taller than a child, maybe 4'9", his white hair tied back as he stood with his hands behind his back, smiling warmly at them. Eridar asked, curious. Yeah, it's our first time. The town's bustling, but pirates are openly murdering people in broad daylight. Doesn't the Navy do anything? Aren't you afraid? Oh, there's a marine fortress just outside Logetown, the old man replied with a wistful smile. But they're outnumbered. We were afraid at first. Eventually, we got used to it. Could you tell us more? Arlen asked, eyes narrowing. Of course, the old man said, stroking his beard as he began to recall the past. To understand this place, you've got to go back to the day the Pirate King died. As the man's story unfolded, Eridar and the others slowly came to understand the strange state of Logetown. When Gold Roger spoke his final words, he ignited the Great Pirate Era. His declaration sent countless souls to sea, all chasing the legendary treasure known as One Piece. As pirates began carving out their own dominions, chaos surged across the world. Even though the East Blue was the weakest of the 4 seas, many still set sail in pursuit of glory. And with Logetown sitting right by the entrance to the Grand Line, it became a natural stopover. The Marines once stationed over 1,000 elite soldiers here. Artillery, fortresses, and even captains from Marine HQ were deployed to halt pirates before they could enter the Grand Line. But there were simply too many. 1 pirate crew might fall, but then 2 would show up. Or 5. Or 15. They took turns attacking. The Marines were reinforced by HQ and various East Blue branches, but they couldn't withstand the onslaught. After years of repeated assaults, all they could do was hold the fortress. The town itself was lost to the pirates. Worse still, the Grand Line was so dangerous that few who entered ever returned. So instead, many pirates stayed in Logue Town, gathering strength or waiting for their chance. And the more they stayed, the more they multiplied. The Marines tried multiple times to sweep the city clean, but every time, it reverted back. Eventually, they gave up and maintained a fragile status quo. Some smarter pirates realized that if every crew pillaged Logue Town, the town would be ruined and then no one would have a place to restock before entering the Grand Line. So a few major crews banded together and created a set of rules. Surprisingly, even the Marines agreed to them. The rules were simple. Pirates could fight or even kill each other but not harm the townsfolk or merchants. No reckless destruction of buildings. No large-scale marine battles within the town. If Marines and pirates wanted to fight, take it to the outskirts or the open sea. Break the rules, and both pirates and Marines would turn on you. Haha, pirates forming a pact. That's rich, Eridar laughed. Now it all makes sense. No wonder the weapons shop owner in the original story was furious when Smoker came to town. Business must have tanked once the strict order returned. Yeah, Arlen said, clapping Gorbo on the shoulder with a grin. Now we can stock up in peace. Once Gorbo finishes the last of the supplies, we can set sail. Hee hee hee. Gorbo chuckled, joined by Dimitri. Perfect, I'll go grab some booze. Oliver perked up. Phui. Boom. Suddenly, an explosion echoed from the direction of the port. What the hell? Eridar snapped to attention, whipping around toward the source of the blast. That was a cannon, Arlen said grimly. The others had already turned as well. The people on the street were growing anxious. Judging by the sound, the cannonballs had struck inside the port. Sure enough, moments later, a panicked stampede came surging from that direction, practically clogging the entire street. Run! War's breaking out. The Navy's attacking the pirates in town. Eridar and the others were stunned. The Navy? What Navy? Wasn't the East Blue's central base wiped out? Where the hell did they find the guts and the forces to attack Logue Town? Are the Marines trying to purge the pirates again? The old man yelped, nearly yanking out his beard in panic before bolting with shocking speed faster than most young men. Damn it! Captain, our ship's still at the dock, we have to get back. Arlen smacked his thigh as the realization struck. Shit, move! Eridar shouted, already sprinting back toward the port like a bullet. Damn it, wait for us! Arlen and Oliver cursed as they tore off after him, the rest of the crew hot on their heels. Boom! 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 Off the coast of Logue Town, 6 massive marine battleships lined up in a fearsome formation, 2 over 100 meters long and 4 slightly smaller, around 80 meters. Their heavy-caliber cannons roared continuously, bombarding the pirate ships docked in the harbor. Smoke filled the air. The stench of gunpowder was overwhelming. Under the relentless shelling from the marine battleships, many of the smaller pirate ships couldn't withstand the onslaught. 1 or 2 direct hits were enough to send them sinking into the sea. Though some pirates had stayed behind to man the cannons and return fire, they were too few in number and caught off guard by the surprise attack. Many didn't even realize what was happening before they were blown apart. The Marines clearly weren't just anyone, they were elites, and they had the pirates completely outgunned. In just this brief window, 7 or 8 pirate ships, large and small, were sent to the ocean floor. The 6 marine ships quickly advanced into the harbor, where the remaining pirate crews were either wiped out by cannon fire or fled in panic. More than a dozen pirate ships now lay in ruins beneath the waves, their shattered hulls floating in bloody debris-strewn water. The entire harbor had become a scene of carnage, strewn with wreckage and corpses, crimson spreading across the tide. Some pirate ships did manage to escape, veering away from the main harbor and fleeing toward the eastern and western beaches. All units, land and eliminate every pirate in Logue Town. Standing on the bow of one of the massive warships, a stern-faced middle-aged marine officer spoke righteously into a den mushi. He had a sharply chiseled, diamond-shaped face with cropped brown hair. His black suit was accented with silver stripes, and over it he wore the iconic white marine coat of justice. A cross-shaped longsword hung at his waist. Even the Marines standing nearby eyed him with awe and tension. Clearly, this was a man of strict discipline. On another warship of similar size, another high-ranking Marine stood at the bow. In stark contrast, this one looked almost too relaxed, casually slouched with a den mushi in hand. His voice was sleepy, barely animated. Troops, land at Logue Town and coordinate with Rear Admiral Farlier's forces to secure the area. He looked to be in his early 30s, clean-cut and innocent-looking, with delicate features and fair skin. Dressed in a pure white suit from jacket to his pointed leather shoes, he also wore a white justice coat draped over his shoulders. Rear Admiral Evans, said a young officer beside him, also wearing a justice coat and gripping the hilt of his blade. Based on intel, the pirate Eridar, the one who killed Captain Mori, should also be on this island, judging from his movements. We also spotted the Chris pirate's ship fleeing toward the eastern beach. There were less than 100 people aboard, definitely not the full crew. That suggests Eridar and the main targets are still on the island. The middle-aged officer was Rear Admiral Farlier of Marine Headquarters. The young one was Rear Admiral Evans, also of Headquarters. They were two of the 4 Rear Admirals assigned to the East Blue sector of Operation Weedkiller, Marine HQ's sweeping campaign to purge the region. Originally, the plan was to gather at the East Blue 17th Branch Fortress and then divide the area into zones for the operation. But after the Sasardo Kingdom, a world government member nation, was overthrown by the Revolutionary Army and the entire 17th Branch Fortress destroyed by the world's most dangerous criminal, Monkey D. Dragon, the task force was left in disarray, unsure where to regroup. Fleet Admiral Sengoku ultimately issued new orders. The Purge Fleet was to resupply at the nearest available branch, then split into 2 groups, one to carry out sweeps of the East Blue, the other to secure Logue Town, a critical choke point at the gateway to the Grand Line. As for Eridar's discovery, that was pure coincidence. The CP agency had originally dispatched agents to track Dragon. While investigating, they stumbled upon the Frost Dance Tavern, where both Dragon and Eridar had been seen. To the world government, anyone connected to Dragon is automatically high priority. Since Eridar was also a pirate, his intel was passed to the Marines. Sengoku gave a clear directive: occupy Logue Town and capture or eliminate Eridar and the entire Chris Pirates crew. Well then, time to hit the shore. But man, that guy must be something else. Evans clicked his tongue. Mori may have been a bit hot-headed, but he wasn't weak. Getting taken out by a rookie fresh out to sea? That's a damn disgrace. At that moment, the 6 Marine ships made landfall. A flood of Marines stormed ashore, hauling land-based artillery, mortars, and rocket launchers. Elsewhere on Logtown's main street, Eridar and his crew were on the move. Most of the crew had regrouped, and they were rushing toward the harbor. Captain! Bad news! A man sprinted up to them, shouting with urgency. Weru? What happened at the harbor? Asked Gorbo, stepping forward. Weru was one of the members of his 3rd Division. Huff, huff. Captain. Commander. Weru panted heavily. 2 second-class Marine warships and 4 third-class ones, they're already in the harbor. They've landed. I saw at least a dozen pirate ships sunk. Ours and a few others are heading east to the beach. What? That fast? Eridar and the others were stunned. They didn't expect the Marines to move so fast. Barely 10 minutes had passed, and the harbor was already locked down. Captain, I'll head to the eastern beach with Gorbo and Dimitri. We'll set up a defensive perimeter. We have to protect the ship, said Arlen with a steely expression. I'm giving you 100 men. The ship's in your hands, Eridar nodded. We'll go to the central square. I'm guessing most of the pirate crews will rally there. Got it. With that, Eridar's crew split into 2 units, one heading for the central square, the other toward the eastern beach. Meanwhile, a few minor pirate crews at the harbor tried to counterattack, hoping to drive the Marines back into the sea. Instead, they were utterly crushed, mowed down in a hail of bullets. Dozens of bodies were left behind, and the rest fled in a panic deeper into the town. Using makeshift barricades and mounted weapons, the Marines quickly built a hedgehog-like temporary fortress at the harbor. Rear Admiral Farlier, the pirates are holed up inside Logue Town. Our ship guns can't fire in there without risking civilian casualties, Evans said, scratching his head, a hint of frustration on his otherwise carefree face. No matter. The local garrison has already contacted us. They'll assist with the assault, Farlier replied coolly, glancing at the flamboyantly dressed Evans without emotion. In that case, let's move quickly. Hit them before they fully regroup. But keep your eyes on the Chris Pirates. Eridar is no joke, Evans said, his face momentarily turning serious. You're right. Target, every pirate in Logue Town. All units attack. Justice will prevail. Slay them all. With a shout, Farlier unsheathed his crossblade and pointed it forward. Attack. Justice will prevail. For justice. Kill. In a flash, the thousands of Marines stationed at the harbor surged forward, guns raised and swords drawn like tigers unleashed down a mountain. Boom boom boom. Cannon fire thundered across Logue Town as chaos reigned. Pirates and Marines clashed violently throughout the town, bodies littered the streets, blood flowed like rivers. It was nothing short of a hellish slaughterhouse. Damn it! The Navy got here way too fast. Oliver growled through clenched teeth, ducking into a narrow alley. His face was streaked with soot and grime, his twin katanas still dripping with blood. At his feet lay the mangled bodies of over a dozen Marine soldiers. Just behind him, the alley was packed wall to wall with pirates, members of the Chris Pirates, every one of them on edge and crammed shoulder to shoulder. They had been advancing towards Central Plaza when Marine artillery blindsided them. Half the street had been engulfed in shell fire. More than 10 crewmates had been killed or maimed. Fortunately, Eridar and Oliver had reacted quickly, intercepting incoming shells and leading a retreat into the maze-like alleyways, where they wiped out a Marine recon team. This was their plan all along: ambush Logue Town in a surprise attack, Eridar muttered coldly, leaning against the wall. His expression was grim, losing more than a dozen crewmates in an instant hit hard. The last time they tangled with the Navy, casualties were about the same, but that had been a full campaign. Eridar had already guessed it, the Marines bombarding the main street had to be the original garrison stationed at Logetown Fortress. Using their familiarity with the town, they had penetrated deep inside, launched a precise shelling of the main street, and then rapidly deployed troops to sever the connection between pirate groups at the town center and those on the outskirts. Their goal wasn't just division, it was annihilation of the pirate coalition. After all, dozens of pirate crews had converged on Logetown, thousands of men. If they managed to unite and fight back with everything they had, they might not defeat the Navy outright, but they'd inflict serious damage. And right now, with the Navy stretching its forces thin across the world, every casualty counted. A disaster here would cripple the East Blue Sweep Fleet, leaving only a single squadron to police a sea this vast. That would be a joke. Pirates would swarm like sharks smelling blood. The world government and the Navy couldn't afford such a humiliation, not politically, not strategically. Captain, what now? Oliver asked, glancing around the alley's mouth, dual blades at the ready. Do we break through to link up with the other crews, or retreat toward the beach? Eridar furrowed his brow in thought. After a moment, he said, forget the beach. The Navy's not focused there, they're hitting Logetown head-on, especially the main street. The shoreline's packed with pirate ships and cannons. If they band together and use the terrain right, they'll hold out. Yeah, makes sense. Most of the top pirate crews are in town anyway, Oliver nodded. The ones by the beach are mostly lookouts and reserves. Unless Logtown's completely taken and we're all wiped out, no one's abandoning those vessels. The only ones that'll sink are the ones the Navy torches. Exactly. So if we're not running to the shore, we fight. Eridar's voice sharpened with purpose. The main street is critical. It connects most of the town, and it's wide enough for moving cannons, supplies, everything. That's why the Navy made it their priority and why it's crawling with pirates too. He spoke with calm intensity. Years of reading war novels and watching tactical films weren't for nothing. So here's the play, we hit the Marines blocking the main street. We destroy their cannons. If we can open up that choke point, the scattered pirate crews inside and outside the city can link up again. We might not win the upper hand, but at least we won't stay isolated and get picked off one by one. Oliver let out a low laugh. Heh, crafty bastards. I wonder whose idea this was. They're fighting dirty, I'll give them that. He scowled. But are we doing this alone? No way, the town garrison is that small. If they were, the pirates would have wiped them out ages ago. No choice. We make our name known, pull in scattered pirates under our banner. With our strength combined, you and I could wipe out a marine force of 1,000, easy. Eridar grinned, wicked and confident, sliding on his signature metal gauntlets with slow deliberation. Heh. That look of yours is damn ugly, Captain, Oliver smirked, twirling his blades with a flourish, clearly enjoying the banter. TCH. Eridar's mouth twitched as he turned away with a dismissive scoff. Then he barked out to the men, brothers. Let's show them who we are, raise our name high and slaughter those bastards. Yeah. Kill the Marines. We're the strongest in the East Blue. We're the damn Chris pirates. A chorus of savage roars erupted as the pirates brandished swords, guns, and axes, grinning with bloodlust, eyes gleaming with the thrill of battle. Charge! Eridar surged forward, leading the way. Charge! Oliver followed, and the entire alley erupted in a mad, screaming rush. Under their command, the 100-odd crew cut through marine patrols one after another. Along the way, they absorbed another 200 pirates, remnants of other scattered crews. These newcomers had all been hit hard by marine shelling and sudden assaults. Separated, disorganized, and outnumbered, they had no chance of holding their ground. The Navy had routed them like dogs. From them, Eridar gleaned critical intel. The Marines in the town were indeed the former Logetown garrison, roughly 800 strong, equipped with over 28-pounder and 12-pounder cannons. Their commanding officer? Captain Paraz, a Navy HQ officer. After smashing through the pirate lines at the center, Paraz's main force had pulled back to the main street and set up a fortified defensive position. They'd also dispatched multiple patrols and recon units to sweep the surrounding areas. At the center of the main street, the Marines had entrenched themselves. Cannons were arrayed front and back, sealing off access from both ends. "See, Captain. Trouble incoming." Suddenly, a bloodied Marine stumbled out from a side alley, collapsing at the feet of his comrades. His terrified screams drew everyone's attention. "What's with the panic? I'm here." A massive figure in a justice coat appeared in a flash, catching the staggering soldier before he fell. "What happened?" "Captain Parasite, pirates, lots of them. They're coming this way." The soldier clung to him, eyes wide with panic. This was Paraz, captain of the Logetown garrison, dispatched by Marine headquarters. "What? Pirates? I thought we'd scattered them." Paraz's face twisted in shock as he grabbed the soldier's arm. "Who are they?" It's the Chris pirates, sir. Leading them is the 40 million bounty golden ring Eridar and the 20 million bounty dual blade swordsman Oliver. The soldier's voice cracked as he spoke, trembling as if repeating a death sentence. What? Captain Paras gasped, momentarily stunned with disbelief. He had assumed the most wanted pirate in the East Blue would target the two rear admirals from headquarters, but instead, the enemy struck his defensive position. This attack hit the Navy's weak point like a dagger straight into the heart. Boom! Ah! What is that? No! Suddenly, a visible shockwave burst from a side alley to the right, crashing into the street. Dozens of Marines were swept up in the air, tossed like ragdolls by the invisible force. Some slammed into walls, others crashed to the pavement, and some were flung all the way into the alleys beyond, blood spraying from their mouths and noses, bones shattered on impact. That's a shockwave. Captain Paras's eyes went wide in horror. For a second, he thought it was Fleet Admiral Sengoku himself, but then he remembered. The one who can unleash shockwaves like that. Chris T. Eridar. Moments later, a wave of pirates surged out from the alley and side streets howling, shrieking, wild-eyed with bloodlust and hatred. Bang! 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 Dozens, hundreds of pirates flooded the main street, guns blazing as they opened fire on the Marines. Damn Navy bastards! Kill them all! Follow Golden Ring Eridar-sama! Charge! Eat shit, you worthless dogs in white! Behind the gunners came another wave, pirates wielding swords, axes, and all manner of crude weapons. They screamed like demons, charging forward, weapons raised high, slashing at everything in their path. Damn it! Captain Paras's mind reeled. How had the tides turned so suddenly? His entire defensive line was now overrun. Shaking off his daze, he roared. Scum of the sea, die! The wind whipped his justice cloak as he drew his blade and leapt into the fray. With a flick of his right leg. Swoosh! A crescent-shaped blue-white slash tore through the air. SHHK! 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 Blood sprayed. 8 pirates were sliced clean in half at the waist. Brutal. Merciless. Clang. Sparks exploded as metal struck metal, the ringing echoing through the street. Arg! All around, Marines and pirates alike dropped their weapons and clutched their ears, writhing in pain from the deafening clash. Captain Paras's downward slash had been intercepted by a katana. He looked up. A man stood before him, hooked nose, thin lips curled into a sinister smile. His white coat flared as he bared his chest, revealing a long scar across his torso. Tight black pants, heavy black boots. Oliver. Dual sword style swordsman of the Chris pirates. Bounty, 20 million berries, Paras growled through gritted teeth. Het. What an honor you actually recognize me. Oliver licked his lips with a predatory grin. Pressing his left-hand katana against the Marine's blade, he raised his right sword Nagamitsu and brought it down in a savage arc. Captain Parasite, your life is mine. You've got that backwards. Paras twisted away just in time, dodging the strike and counter-attacking. Clang! Clang clang! Clang clang clang! Blades clashed in a furious exchange. Though only a captain, Paras hailed from Navy headquarters, his strength was formidable. Sparks flew with every collision of steel. Two-sword style, winged slash. Oliver crossed his blades like wings, then brought them crashing down like a hawk descending on its prey. Swoosh! Twin slashes of blue-white energy screamed through the air toward Paras. Cheap tricks! Spiral blade! Eyes blazing, Paras spun his blade rapidly with both hands. Shoom! A spiraling slash of energy erupted from his sword. Boom! Smoke and debris filled the air. Behind Oliver, the ground caved in, leaving a massive crater marked with spiral grooves as if a giant drill had bored into the earth. Behind Paras, a 4-story building had been bisected vertically clean as glass, without a single jagged edge. You bastard! Paras glared at Oliver, seething. Splurt! Before he could finish, 2 bloody gashes tore open across his chest. His coat soaked red in an instant. He stared in disbelief. How is that even possible? He collapsed, unmoving. Not bad for a Navy captain from headquarters. Oliver muttered, glancing at the torn sleeve on his left arm. He had come this close. Had he not reacted faster, that spiral slash would have turned him into paste. Oliver, not bad, came a drawling voice. Chris T. Eridar strolled casually through the battlefield, unfazed by the carnage. He walked up beside Oliver, then casually extended a hand grasping at empty air as if catching something invisible. And then, with a flick. Boom! A newly formed marine formation exploded, as if struck by a cannonball. The air warped, a powerful shockwave rippling outward in all directions. Over a dozen Marines were hurled through the air. The entire squad formation crumbled in an instant. That simple gesture? Eridar had compressed the air in his palm into a near-solid impact bomb, created purely through his mastery of shockwave manipulation. When released, its explosive force far surpassed that of a 24-pound naval cannon. And no. We're in trouble. Captain Paras is down. Captain Paras was defeated by the pirate Oliver. Chris T'Eridar is here too. Panic spread like wildfire. Marines looked upon the fallen captain, then at Eridar walking calmly down the street, and when they saw him obliterate their formation with a flick of his wrist, they broke ranks and fled in terror. They're already running. Eridar blinked, then frowned in annoyance. TCH. These guys are no fun at all. Fine then. Die. WHHRRRRRRM. The air around him hummed. A low, ominous vibration filled the streets. Boom. A massive ring-shaped shockwave erupted from Eridar, tearing down the main street toward the port. It stretched for hundreds of meters, the sheer force gouging deep trenches into the pavement. No arg. What the hell is this? Damn it. Over 200 Marines were consumed by the blast. Even the ironclad cannons were torn from their mounts and flung aside like toys. The street was devastated. Anything not bolted down was ripped away by the storm. I must be seeing things. Can someone tell me I'm not dreaming? Is he even human? No way. Is that guy a monster? The pirates from the other crews nearly had their eyeballs pop out of their sockets as they watched Chris T'Eridar slowly retract his fist, wearing a savage grin. Some were so frightened they collapsed onto their butts. As third-rate pirates of the East Blue, they'd never witnessed anything remotely this terrifying. To them, someone who could fight off 100 men alone or dodge bullets was already terrifying enough. But a man who could unleash a shockwave with a single punch that ripped through the air and tore across half a street? That wasn't just something they hadn't seen before, they'd never even heard of it. The Marines who had formed the blockade were nearly annihilated. Even a few pirates waiting at the outskirts for an opening got caught in the blast. Those with thinner frames were swept up like leaves in a storm, flung into the air by the violent wind. Even the bulkier ones were knocked off their feet, tumbling several times across the ground. As the smoke cleared, pirates both on the main road and the periphery saw the devastation laid bare. A semicircular trench, nearly 5 meters wide, gouged through the street, stretching so far it vanished into the distance. At the entrance to the main road, it was pure chaos. Shattered flagstones, broken goods from market stalls, even the front-loading cannons the Marines had deployed for defense, everything lay in ruin, scattered across the ground. And the most chilling sight of all, over 100 Marine corpses, flung forward by the blast, many of them in pieces. Severed limbs. Bloodied torsos. The scene was nothing short of carnage. What the hell happened here? What is this? What just went down? The pirates at the edge of the battlefield stared blankly, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Just moments ago, they had been rallying hundreds of pirates, preparing to break through the Navy's blockade before reinforcements from the port arrived. But before they could even charge forward, the entire street had turned into a war zone. Boom! 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 Suddenly, strange bursts rang out from the sky. The pirates instinctively looked up. Thud! Before they could see what was coming, the world seemed to darken. A heavy, muffled impact echoed out, followed by a wave of pressure and dust, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. It felt like something massive had just crashed down from the sky. Hey, seriously? That guy's on a whole different level. As the smoke cleared again, the pirates lowered their hands and saw a man standing there, his back to them. He wore a pristine white suit and a Marine-issued justice coat draped over his shoulders. A Marine? How did he even get here? The pirates were stunned. The main road was completely blocked off. How had no one noticed his approach? I know him. That's a Rear Admiral from Marine Headquarters, the White Devil, Evans, a pirate suddenly cried, falling on his rear, eyes full of fear. Our Rear Admiral? And no way. At once, many of the pirates swallowed hard, instinctively stepping back. They weren't idiots. Many of them had been in Logtown long enough to know, the strongest person in this town wasn't some infamous pirate with a bounty over 10 million, it was Captain Paras from Marine HQ. His swordsmanship was vicious and precise. None of the pirates had stood a chance against him. The only reason they had managed to take over the town was due to overwhelming numbers and firepower. Had they faced him one-on-one, they would have been dead or captured already. And now Rear Admiral had shown up? Anyone with half a brain could see this guy made Captain Paras look like a warm-up. Whoa, that speed! Evans suddenly looked up sharply. A black figure plummeted from the sky. With a single stomp of his foot, he vanished from sight. Boom! A shockwave blasted out from where he had stood, flinging debris and dust in every direction. The force tore up the pavement across a radius of several meters. What now? Something just hit. Looks like something came crashing down again. The pirates were on the verge of losing it. It was one shock after another, they couldn't even catch their breath. As the smoke faded again, they saw a large, uneven crater where Evans had stood. At the center of the pit stood a young man in his 20s. He looked plain but cheerful, wore a black coat patterned with white waves, no shirt underneath, and a golden ring on his ear. Something about him looked very familiar. A burly pirate captain in a blood-red cloak suddenly recognized him, eyes wide. That's the most notorious pirate in the East Blue. The captain of the Chris Pirates. Bounty, 40 million berries golden ring Chris T. Eridar. It's really him. East Blue's #1 pirate. Dead on with his bounty poster. One pirate quickly pulled out a wanted poster for comparison, and the rest lit up with glee. With a bounty that high, surely the rear admiral wouldn't waste his time on small fry like them. Man, that was close. Evans stood atop a toppled cannon, patting his chest in mock relief. Almost had me there. Observation hacky, huh? No wonder they call you a rear admiral. Eridar climbed out of the crater, smirking. Though phrased like a question, his tone was certain and teasing. You're under Admiral Kizaru, aren't you? You've got that same sleazy movement style, but you're way better looking. Oh? You've met Admiral Kizaru? Evans narrowed his eyes, voice cooling. Well, who's to say? Before the words had even finished leaving his mouth, Eridar vanished, leaving behind only cracked flagstones where he'd stood. A mere rookie pirate. Don't underestimate me. Evans, clearly irritated now, also disappeared in a blur. Boom. The air rippled with a thunderous burst. Pirates nearby clutched their ears in pain. The shockwave alone was overwhelming. Boom. 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 On the battlefield, a black and white blur danced across the streets. They clashed in the sky, then slammed into the ground, each impact triggering sonic booms or gouging fresh craters into the pavement. Suddenly, a massive crescent-shaped slash of bluish-white energy arced through the air, slicing through the barrel of a 12-pound cannon like butter. A shockwave followed immediately, carving a deep trench several meters long in the ground and shattering the initial attack. Then, Evans appeared in midair, his legs rapidly kicking as he unleashed a flurry of bluish-white crescent slashes raining down in all directions. Rankyaku multi-slash. Humph. On the ground, Eridar stared up at the wave of slashes descending upon him. With a mocking scoff, he thrust his right fist skyward. The air above him suddenly caved inward, like a vortex sucking in the world. Then, in a flash, a translucent, ring-shaped shockwave blasted upward, visible to the naked eye like a hurricane unleashed in an instant. At that moment, on the eastern shoreline of Logue Town, 3 Class 3 Marine warships and 3 Class 4 warships were bombarding several pirate ships stranded along the beach. In retaliation, the pirates centered around the massive Chris fired back with everything they had. In terms of sheer numbers, the pirates had the advantage, boasting 15 ships against the Marines' 6. 2 of the Class 3 warships hailed from Marine headquarters, while the rest belonged to Logue Town's local garrison. But in firepower, the disparity was overwhelming. Aside from the Chris, most of the pirate vessels were only 40 to 50 meters long, some stretched to 70 or 80 at most, and their cannons were wildly inconsistent. Many were low-grade 12-pounders or even 8-pounders, mostly repurposed land artillery, and they were few in number. If the Chris hadn't borne the brunt of the assault, those sorry excuses for pirate ships would have been reduced to floating scrap in no time. While cannon fire raged at sea, nearly 1,000 Marines rowed ashore in small boats. Led by 2 captains from headquarters along with a commander still aboard ship, coordinating bombardment and artillery support, they launched a full-scale assault on the pirates dug in along the beach, pushing them back step by step. Fortunately, reinforcements arrived just in time. Arlen, Gorbo, and Dimitri had rallied several smaller crews, each with a few dozen members, and some scattered fighters from larger pirate crews. Altogether, their numbers swelled past 400. Upon learning of Arlen's identity, the pirates willingly followed his lead and rushed to the eastern beach to block the Marines' advance. One of the headquarters captains was intercepted by Arlen himself. The other was held off by Gorbo and Dimitri, working in tandem. Now nearly 2,000 combatants clashed on the beach, neither side able to gain the upper hand. The sand ran red with blood, and even the sea itself was stained crimson. Main Street, Logue Town. Boom. 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 Thud. 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 High above the town square, 2 figures clashed violently in midair. Eridar crossed his arms in a block, intercepting a kick from Evans. The sheer force behind the blow drove Eridar downward, but as he fell, he reached out and caught Evans' leg, dragging him down with him. Crash! Stone shattered and smoke exploded outward as they slammed into the street, forming yet another crater in the ground. Across that crater, the 2 men stood facing each other once more. I underestimated you, Evans growled, his tone grim. No wonder you managed to take out Mori. I think I've figured out your devil fruit ability. His white suit was tattered, caked in dust and grime, his slick demeanor shaken. Is that so? Eridar clapped dust off his shoulders, his gaze narrowing. You still haven't gone all out yet, have you? Evans let out a dark chuckle. So you noticed. Yet. I picked this up by accident, on a mission. Eridar's eyes widened. A devil fruit. That's right. Evans roared. His body suddenly began to swell, shredding his clothes as white fur erupted across his limbs. His head elongated, nails growing into vicious claws. A blast of icy air burst forth from his skin, so chilling that Eridar shivered on reflex. In mere seconds, Evans had transformed into a massive humanoid wolf 3 meters tall, with razor fangs, blue-white eyes and frost forming in a radius around him. Zoan type. Ancient Zoan? Mythical Zoan? Eridar muttered, frowning. The cold emanating from the creature gave him pause. Impressive. You even know the classifications, rumbled the white wolf, his voice deep and low. His chilling gaze never left Eridar. I don't mind telling you I ate the ancient Zoan, Snowfang wolf fruit. Original devil fruit, not canon, don't mind the naming. An ancient Zoan. I thought it was a mythical type, Eridar said quietly. Makes sense, if your commanding officer is Admiral Kizaru. Now it all fit together. The Snowfang wolf was a creature of the prehistoric frozen lands, similar in status to dinosaurs, ancient, powerful, and rare. Unlike most Zoan types, Snowfangs possessed a passive freezing ability. Those who merely touched one risked frostbite or worse, full body freeze. I thought it was mythical too, at first, Evans admitted, flexing his clawed fingers. Even though it's ancient, its powers are borderline supernatural. And Kizaru is my commanding officer. Devil fruits or not, Eridar cracked his neck with a sharp pop. I'll find out everything I need to know in the next few minutes. In a flash, his feet stomped the ground over a dozen times, then he vanished from view. So full of energy, Evans chuckled. He too disappeared. Thud. A dull explosion echoed through the street as their fists collided, generating a shockwave so intense it splintered the pavement beneath their feet. Ice powers. Eridar muttered, watching frost creep along his arm from the point of impact. Impressive, right? Evans said proudly, shaking his enormous wolfish head. Just a passive ability. With a surge of haki, Eridar flexed his arms and shattered the frost encasing them, forcing Evans back. Smart bastard. Evans felt the pressure and chose not to resist directly. He flipped through the air, landing 10 meters away. I guess it's time I stopped holding back. Let me show you devil fruit powers aren't invincible. With a feral snarl, Evans spread his claws. They gleamed with icy light as he leapt forward, aiming straight for Eridar's head. The air whistled with the force of his strike. It was a blow that could tear through stone. Eridar reacted instantly. He raised his left arm to block the claw and twisted, throwing Evans behind him. At the same time, his right fist shot out in a powerful counterstrike, hammering into Evans' chest. Boom! Evans was launched over 20 meters. Mid-air, he twisted and caught the ground with one hand, his claws gouging 5 deep scars into the stone. KH. Blood trickled from his lips as he knelt on one knee, chest heaving. Pain shot through his ribs, and his left arm hung limp, possibly fractured. It trembled uncontrollably. Solid armament haki. You've seen your fair share of battles in the New World, haven't you? Eridar said admiringly, eyeing the jet-black coating now visible on Evans' arms and chest. Among the Marines, Vice Admirals were expected to master both armament and observation haki. Rear Admirals were less consistent, some could wield both, others only one, and a few had no haki at all. But those Rear Admirals who had mastered both haki types usually had one thing in common, they'd all survived the hellscape of the New World. After all, that's where monsters like Evans weren't even the rarest thing you'd find. Even Logia-type users weren't that uncommon there. Chapter 55-55, The Battle of Logue Town, 1 against 2. You can use armament haki too. Evans stared in disbelief at Eridar's jet-black arms, which shimmered faintly with a metallic sheen. Now it made sense. No wonder that punch had been so powerful. Even with armament haki reinforcing his defense, it still hurt like hell. So it wasn't just the guy's devil fruit power, he also had haki. But the real kicker? This guy hadn't even entered the Grand Line yet. Being a devil fruit user as a rookie wasn't exactly rare, there were strong upstarts across the seas. But who the hell has a devil fruit power, an overwhelming physical strength and mastery over haki, something even many rear admirals and captains couldn't fully wield? Was this guy even human? Oh, this. Eridar raised his arm and flexed his fingers slightly, the darkened surface glinting like polished steel. It's just armament haki. Nothing special. Damn it. Eridar's expression shifted, and he suddenly twisted his body to the right. SHHHHK. A massive slash sliced through the air right next to him, cleaving past with the ease of a hot blade through butter. Behind him, a 4-story building split cleanly down the middle. Boom, boom, boom. The building groaned and collapsed on both sides. Bricks scattered. Wooden beams snapped like twigs. The cut was unnaturally smooth, no rough edges, no resistance. A sneak attack from the so-called righteous navy. Eridar's gaze darkened as he looked ahead. If his observation haki hadn't been sharp enough, he would have taken that blow straight on. And judging by the force behind it, even with armament haki defense, he'd be seriously injured now. You showed up just in time, Farlier-senpai. Evans coughed out a bitter laugh from his half-kneeling position. Following Aridar and Evans's line of sight, a tall figure stood atop the roof of a nearby 3-story building. He was over 2 meters tall, lanky but imposing. A sharply angular, expressionless face. Short brown hair. A black suit with silver pinstripes, draped in the Navy's white coat of justice. In his hand gleamed a bright silver cross-shaped longsword. Humph! When dealing with evil pirates, no tactic is too dirty. The man leapt from the rooftop, stepped in midair, flipped, and landed silently next to Evans. He glanced down at the battered officer with a slight frown and muttered coldly. Pathetic. You even used your devil fruit powers, and still got wrecked like this. Cough cough. Evans let out another couple of hacks before the tightness in his chest eased slightly. His left arm was starting to respond again. Slowly, he rose to his feet with a grim face. Farlier-senpai, don't underestimate him. That man, he's really strong. I know, Farlier said coolly. Anyone who can kill Mori with ease and nearly cripple you without breaking a sweat, that strength is obvious. Evans winced. Come on, can we stop bringing up how badly I got beaten? Oi, are you done chatting yet? Aridar's tone was flat but laced with irritation. Because I'm coming. He's moving. Farlier's eyes sharpened, and he raised his crossblade vertically before his chest. Be careful. Evans barked, shifting into a combat stance. He can strike the air to launch powerful shockwaves. He knows some of the techniques from Rokushiki, and he can use both observation and armament haki fluently. Not much of a rookie, is he? Farlier's expression twitched slightly, a rare hint of sarcasm slipping into his usually icy demeanor. Run run! Get out of here! Keep your distance! Don't get caught in the fight between those monsters, you'll die! The pirates near the street entrance scattered in a panic. With a second rear admiral joining the fray, they knew the clash was about to escalate. None of them wanted to be collateral damage. Still, a few of the smarter pirate captains understood the stakes. While the battle at the crossroads raged, they rallied their crews to hold off the Navy's full-scale assault surging from the harbor. Oliver, seeing his captain blocking the main street in a three-way showdown with 2 rear admirals, turned on his heel and rushed off to rally the larger pirate crews still inside the town. He knew the outer defenses wouldn't last long. They needed reinforcements, more bodies, and a hell of a lot more firepower. Boom! The three clashed in an instant. Shockwaves exploded from the impact. The fight instantly reached a fever pitch. Observation haki flared wildly as each combatant tried to anticipate the other's moves. Armament haki clashed with thunderous force, each blow strong enough to shatter steel. The surrounding environment was obliterated, buildings crumbled under shockwaves or were split cleanly by massive slashes. All three were masters of Jeppo moonwalk, so the fight often carried into the sky. When their attacks landed, the ground erupted, craters from shockwave strikes, long fissures from airborne slashes. The entire street was reduced to rubble. Even excluding Aridar, the 2 rear admirals alone were at least on par with Luffy's Gear 2 or Zoro's Breath of all things state, possibly stronger. In terms of endurance and destructive power, they had the edge. These weren't mere grunts, they were elite veterans from the New World, their dual haki mastery rivaling that of most vice admirals stationed at marine fortresses. Clang! Aridar blocked Evans's claw strike with one hand while slamming a punch into Farlier's sword. The resulting shockwave blasted outward with terrifying force, sending vibrations through the ground and air. TCH. Farlier's face twisted as he was sent flying through the air. Boom! He smashed into a stone wall, embedding into it with a thunderous crash. The wall caved in around him, spiderweb cracks radiating out from the impact. What the hell was that force? I'm a rear admiral, for crying out loud. A swordsman and hand-to-hand combat specialist. And he just punched me through a damn wall. Smack! Evans grabbed Aridar's wrist, yanked him forward, and launched himself with both feet off the ground, knees aimed straight at Aridar's chest. Chat! Aridar's eyes narrowed in surprise, but he recovered quickly. He grabbed Evans's wrist with his other hand, and his chest shimmered as armament haki coated it like armor. Thud! A dull boom rang out as the two collided, a blast of wind surging out from the impact. The ground beneath them cratered. The force shattered nearby tiles and hurled debris outward like shrapnel. Both men staggered back several steps and released each other. Guh! Aridar coughed up blood and dropped to one knee, clutching his chest in pain. His organs had taken a hit. Damn it! Evans collapsed onto the ground, barely coherent. His knees were a mangled mess of blood and broken bone. His legs trembled uncontrollably. The kneecaps had fractured, and the muscles in his thighs were severely torn. Suddenly, Aridar's expression twisted in alarm. Instinctively, he tried to dodge to the side but a sharp, searing pain in his chest made him just a beat too slow. Squelch! Ugh! Blood splattered across the ground. A gleaming cross-shaped longsword had pierced just beneath Eridar's left collarbone. He stared at the blade embedded in his flesh, eyes wide in disbelief. You bastard! Eridar had been careless. He never expected the sword-wielding rear admiral to bypass his observation haki completely. It was a harsh reminder when it came to battling high-level opponents, Eridar still lacked real combat experience. With his strength, even if he couldn't fully dodge, he should have at least hardened the strike zone with armament haki. Evil pirate, die! Farlier gripped his sword with both hands, trying to wrench it free and finish Eridar off. I'm not dying that easily. The sight of his own blood sent Eridar into a frenzy. His eyes turned red, face contorting with rage. His haki-hardened left hand clamped down on the blade, stopping it cold. Then his right fist surged forward, a howling wind trailing behind it as he drove it straight into Farlier's gut. Fist style, dual-stage impact fist. Damn it! Armament hardening Tekai, steel armor. Farlier tried to pull his sword free, but Eridar's grip was too strong. When he realized the incoming blow, it was already too late to dodge. The distance between them was just too short. Farlier's abdominal muscles clenched, briefly flashing with a metallic sheen. A pitch-black coat of armament haki covered his core. Boom! The impact didn't sound like a blow against flesh, it was more like a hammer crashing into iron. The ground quaked violently, a cloud of dust exploding outward. Guh! Farlier vomited blood on the spot. First, a terrifying force ripped through his hardened muscles, then a second wave slammed into his internal organs. He felt like his insides were twisted into knots, the pain stabbing into his very soul. His grip faltered. His body folded over and was flung backward like a broken kite, tumbling several meters before crashing to the ground with a loud crack, kicking up another burst of dust. Clang! Eridar grit his teeth. With a grunt, he yanked the cross-shaped longsword from his body and tossed it aside. You bastards! You've pissed me off now. He rose to his feet, bloodshot eyes glaring with murderous intent. His expression was eerily calm, but his face was twisted in a way that sent chills down one's spine. He was furious, truly furious. Since arriving in the world of One Piece, not even on Kuko's island had he suffered a wound this serious. In the early days, he'd been injured a few times by the island's beasts due to his lack of strength, but since then, he'd rarely been hurt. But today, due to a moment of carelessness, he'd taken a deep stab. Had he not tightened his muscles in time to clamp the blade, it might have pierced straight through his chest. Let's start with you. Eridar leapt forward, driving a powerful, wind-laced kick straight toward Evans's head. Don't underestimate me, I'm a Marine Headquarters Rear Admiral. Evans roared, lifting his head to meet the blow head-on. His beast-like eyes blazed with killing intent, and he refused to back down. Instead, he threw a punch to intercept. Boom! The ground beneath Evans cracked and caved in. The raw force from their clash rippled through the earth like water, tearing open fissures in all directions. As expected of a Zoan, ancient type, Snowfang Wolf fruit user, Evans had an incredible healing factor. Just moments ago, his knees were shredded, but now they were already halfway recovered. He launched into a head-on clash with Eridar again. Both fighters unleashed their armament haki in full, observation haki locked tightly onto one another. Fists met kicks in a flurry of devastating blows. Eridar, a paramecia, impact fruit user, dealt crushing attacks, while Evans's endurance and regeneration allowed him to take the hits and keep fighting. The two were evenly matched, air trembling, the battlefield cracking, the skies themselves seeming to rip apart. 10 claws, wolf claw tempest. From above, 10 blue-white slashes over a meter long tore through the sky, carving deep scars into the earth. Maximum ring, impact wave. The surrounding air was instantly disrupted. Violent gales swept outward as a massive ring-shaped shockwave obliterated a 4-story building and gouged a crater over 3 meters wide and 1 meter deep into the ground. Sword art, cross execution. A cross-shaped slash split the air, carving a massive X into the earth. Having recovered slightly, Farlier retrieved his longsword and rejoined the battle. The three engaged in blinding speed combat, chaining together Soru and Jeppo with dazzling proficiency rivaling even CP9's Rokushiki masters. Midair, Eridar hardened his arm and grabbed Evans's ankle, slamming him toward the ground. At the same time, he snatched Farlier's sword with his other hand, but Farlier's retaliatory kick landed square in Eridar's gut, sending all three of them spiraling to the earth. Boom! 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 3 bodies crashed down like meteors, shaking the ground. Dust flew as they left 3 distinct craters. They all staggered up, heads spinning. Farlier, closest to Eridar, lunged first. His sword, now black with armament haki, slashed downward. Clang! Eridar didn't flinch. He punched straight into the blade. Fist style, fracturing impact. A thunderous force exploded from his fist. Farlier felt an irresistible shock surge into his arm. The webbing of his hand tore open, and his grip failed. His sword clattered to the ground as he was blown away by the blast. At that moment, Eridar's head jerked to the side. Evans's claw narrowly missed his ear. Missed, but not deterred, Evans twisted his claw and grabbed Eridar's shoulder, yanking him backward. Eridar couldn't resist Evans's brute strength. His feet left the ground as he was thrown through the air. Damn! Midair, Eridar saw Evans move into position, eyes going wide as Evans pulled back his clawed fist. Shigan, fist cannon. Boom! The ground quaked violently. Dust engulfed the battlefield. Eridar's back slammed into the earth, shattering the stone beneath and forming a massive crater, spiderweb cracks radiating nearly 100 meters. Thud. Ugh! Evans suddenly dropped to one knee, coughing up blood. His fur-covered chest bore two gaping, nearly through and through wounds. His body shrank rapidly, his white fur retracting. From nearly 3 meters tall, he reverted to his human form. The battlefield was now a ruin. Farlier lay in the rubble of a collapsed building, his right arm limp, bones shattered, bone shards piercing through his skin. Blood gushed from his wounds, and his face was soaked in blood from every orifice. Unconscious. Eridar lay embedded in the crater, chest caved in, blood pouring from his nose and mouth. Evans knelt beside the crater, having struck Eridar with his fist cannon at point-blank range, but in that same instant, Eridar had landed 2 impact guns directly to Evans's chest. One missed his heart by inches. Any other man would have had his chest turned to pulp. But Evans's Zoan resilience and active Snowfang Wolf transformation saved his life. Still, the result was clear. All three had lost the ability to fight. A true battle of mutual destruction. Chapter 57-57, The End of the Battle of Logue Town. Elsewhere on the battlefield, the pirates at the perimeter were no match for the Marines. They suffered heavy casualties, their lines completely shattered under the Navy's assault. Yet even the Marines hesitated as they approached the chaos at the main street entrance. The sheer devastation, the booming echoes, and the lingering aftershocks of raw power made them wary of stepping into the domain where monsters clashed. Instead, they began to circle around through side streets and alleys. But fate had other plans. They ran headlong into Oliver's pirate alliance. And this wasn't the ragtag group of a few hundred from earlier. Oliver had since merged with the main pirate forces scattered throughout the town. Now, they numbered in the thousands. Thus, combat broke out across the narrow alleys and side streets. Gunfire and cannon blasts roared, blades clashed in a deadly symphony, and every passing second claimed another life. Oliver himself was like a force of nature, holding his ground against 2 headquarters captains single-handedly. It was a heated and ferocious battle. Clang! 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 Sking! 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 In a small alleyway, 3 figures were locked in deadly combat. Sparks flew in all directions as the ring of steel echoed through the air. With every slash, walls cracked and the ground split open, creating fissures all around. Neither Marines nor pirates dared to get close. One misstep could mean being cleaved in two. 2 sword-style Garuda slash. A massive spectral bird flashed by in an instant, blinding everyone with its speed. Shhhh crack. Buildings towering over 13 feet were sliced clean in half. The thunderous collapse of rubble widened the battlefield, revealing a shocking expanse of devastation. Oliver stood, breathing heavily. His expression was grim. Blood streamed from multiple wounds across his body, leaving his face pale. Across from him stood 2 Marines, both clad in justice emblazoned coats, one wielding a katana, the other a jit. Both were headquarters captains, yet even they were in worse shape than Oliver, their bodies riddled with wounds. What's going on? Why did the noise over there suddenly stop? The 3 fighters exchanged puzzled glances. Could the battle be over? Without a word, they all pulled back, calling for their allies still fighting nearby. They rushed toward the main battlefield. Thud, 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 thud. A cacophony of hurried footsteps approached the mouth of the main street. Dust and smoke filled the air as a massive crowd surged forward. But upon closer look, it was clear the newcomers were split into 2 camps. On one side stood the Marines, clad in standard blue and white uniforms, wielding regulation sabers and rifles. The other was a haphazard mob pirates from across the East Blue, each armed with whatever weapon they had, their attire wildly varied. What happened here? Are those monsters? Can humans really wield power like this? The main street had become a wasteland. The surrounding buildings were leveled into rubble, the ground resembling a meteor-blasted landscape pockmarked with craters and deep gashes from titanic sword strikes. Those unaware of what had just occurred stared in disbelief. Those who were aware were even more shaken. Especially the pirates. They had never witnessed power on this level. Captain. Oliver and the crew of the Chris pirates turned pale as they saw Eridar, their captain, lying near the center of a massive crater. He looked like he'd been embedded into the ground, grievously wounded. Rear Admiral, sir! From the Marines' side came gasps of alarm. No one had expected such an overwhelming display of strength from a mere East Blue pirate. Even with two Rear Admirals fighting together, the result had been this: a mutual defeat. Both sides rushed to retrieve their fallen commanders. Cough, hurry, can't, let them, cough. Justice, will, prevail, kill kill. Evans, barely conscious, clutched the arm of a nearby Marine captain. Before he could finish his sentence, his head lolled to the side, and he passed out. Several Marines exchanged glances. The sight of both Rear Admirals in such dire condition left them shaken. On the other side, Eridar also clung to consciousness, weakly grabbing Oliver's arm. Retreat, can't, hold. Logtown. He too fell unconscious before finishing his plea. Damn it! Oliver's face darkened. He handed Eridar over to his men. Get him out of here. Now. Kill them all, leave no survivors, barked a Marine captain wielding a katana. Eradicate these vile pirates, shouted another, long-haired captain. Kill. For justice. Galvanized by their superior officers, the Marines surged forward once more. Not to be outdone, more than a dozen pirate captains led their crews into the fray, clashing head-on with the Navy forces. Damn it, Captain Kuro, we can't hold this, fall back. Oliver grabbed a younger captain wearing cat-paw-bladed gloves, urgency in his voice. The man had slicked back hair, glasses, and a tailored suit. He kept adjusting his spectacles with a flick of his wrist. Had Eridar been conscious, he would have recognized him instantly, the original Black Cat Pirates Captain Kuro, who once infiltrated the mansion of Kaya in Syrup Village under the alias Clawdor, pretending to be her loyal butler for 3 years in order to steal her fortune and live in luxury. He was younger now, less refined than the man who would later be wanted for 16 million berries. Currently, his bounty was only 10 million. But his intellect was already well known, second only to Ben Beckman of the Red-Haired Pirates. If Eridar had been awake, he would have tried to recruit him on the spot. I figured as much, Kuro muttered, pushing his glasses up with a displeased expression. But I had to try. He turned away with a flick of his coat. Our ship's on the east shore. Let's move. A wise man makes the smart choice. Oliver wiped blood from the corner of his mouth, glanced once at the chaos behind them, and turned to leave. Soon, Oliver's forces and Kuro's Black Cat pirates arrived at the east shore. The fighting there was still intense. Arlen was holding a Marine captain at bay, but couldn't finish him off. Another captain was being stalled by Gorbo and Dimitri. Oliver! What happened to the captain? Arlen shouted as he saw Eridar being carried on a stretcher by 1st Division members. Swoosh! A massive sword slash forced back the Marine captain fighting Arlen. Oliver rushed to his side, face grim. No time to explain. Get to the ship. Now. Got it. Arlen didn't ask questions. He nodded and bolted for the ship. The Marine captain tried to give chase. You're not getting away. Swoosh. 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 Oliver unleashed a flurry of slashes, each one massive and powerful. He kept the Marines at bay with sheer force. Retreat. Gorbo and Dimitri exchanged a glance. After forcing back their opponents, they retreated toward the Chris. With both the Chris pirates and Black Cat pirates withdrawing, the rest of the pirate fleet now lacking support began to fall under the relentless naval onslaught. Pirate ships were sunk one after another by Marine battleships, and their situation grew increasingly desperate. The Navy didn't bother chasing the retreating crews. Instead, they tightened their encirclement, crushing the remaining pirate forces, limiting their chances of escape. The more cunning pirates broke out through weak points, managing to flee Logtown. Some, like the Krieg pirates and Buggy pirates, managed to escape, though they did so at great cost. Others failed, either wiped out entirely or forced to retreat with heavy casualties. Thus, on May 2, year 1512 of the Sea Circle calendar, the 1st Squadron of the East Blue Cleansing Fleet officially cleared all pirate forces from Logtown. Over 20 pirate crews were annihilated, 3,000 enemies killed, more than 1,000 captured, and over 20 ships sunk. But the Marines paid dearly for their victory. Both Rear Admirals were critically wounded. Neither expected Eridar to end in a draw with them. All 6 headquarters captains suffered injuries, 3 of them heavily wounded by members of the Chris pirates. Elite forces sustained over 1,000 casualties, and 6 warships were damaged, 2 of which, third-class vessels, required full drydock overhauls. Even Logtown's local garrison, under Captain Paras, saw over 90% casualties, and 3 Marine ships were sunk, 2 of them by Oliver and the Chris cannons. Chapter 58-58, Recovery. Grand Line Marine Ford Marine Headquarters. At the highest level of the central fortress, inside the Fleet Admiral's office. Crash! A fine porcelain teacup, glazed with a delicate blue and white pattern, shattered against the hardwood floor, shards scattering across the room. Are they useless or what? Fleet Admiral Sengoku slammed a hand down on his desk, roaring with fury. The flush in his face and bulging veins made it clear he was livid. To suffer such heavy losses, in the East Blue, of all places. 6 Navy warships. Over 2,500 personnel fully crewed, that's 2,800. 2 rear admirals, 6 captains, and the Logtown garrison another captain and 1,000 marines. And you're telling me the highest-ranking commanding rear admiral is dead, and the other was nearly crippled? What the hell kind of operation was that? Oh, rookies these days sure are terrifying, drawled a tall, lanky man in a yellow striped suit lounging on the nearby sofa. His shades hid his eyes, and a justice coat hung loosely from his shoulders. Admiral Kizaru. Despite his laid-back tone, he leisurely sipped his tea, unbothered. Kizaru. Sengoku roared again, slamming the desk. Wipe that smug look off your face. Ha ha ha, what a bunch of wild brats. Across from Kizaru, a towering man with a thick jawline chuckled heartily. One hand held a steaming teacup, the other a half-eaten senbei cracker. He glanced through the mission reports sprawled on the coffee table, amusement in his eyes. Vice Admiral Garp. Garp. How many times have I told you don't eat in my office? Sengoku lost it, storming over to snatch the senbei from Garp's hand like a furious schoolteacher. Your shouting can be heard from downstairs, a deep voice cut in. The door burst open as a broad-shouldered man with violet hair stepped inside, face grim. Don't underestimate that sea, he warned. After all, that man was born there. The room went deathly still. That man. The very one who sparked the great pirate era. Gold Roger. Born in East Blue, in the very town of Logtown. A sea of miracles. A sea no one should ever look down on. Roger, hi. Garp muttered under his breath. Even Kizaru set his teacup down, for once dropping his usual aloofness. The Pirate King's birthplace. Sengoku exhaled slowly, then turned back to his desk. Raise the bounties for all pirates who escaped the Battle of Logtown. Especially that vile upstart crew, the Chris Pirates. Their captain, Chris T. Eridar, double his bounty. Oh, 80 million already? That's one hell of a rookie, Kizaru mused, lazily pursing his lips. But fair enough. Zephyr, what about those new recruits? Garp asked, turning his head. They're already assigned, Garp. Tomorrow, you're heading to the New World. If you can, look after them for me. Zephyr sat beside him and took a sip of tea. Ha 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 ha, don't worry. Garp grinned, slapping Zephyr's shoulder. It'll just be a little introduction to what real war in the New World looks like. Sengoku spoke again, voice firm. Zephyr. You've still got another batch of cadets, haven't you? Are they done with training? You mean Anne and Binza's group? Not yet. Why? I want you to take them on a real-world deployment through the first half of the Grand Line. Target emerging pirate crews. Engage them directly. Especially the Chris Pirates. Eridar seriously wounded. They won't be entering the Grand Line just yet. If you encounter them, eliminate them on the spot. Dead or alive. Zephyr nodded solemnly. Understood. Leave it to me. East Blue, a small island behind a mountain range. A massive, triple-mast wolf-headed warship, the Chris, lay battered but afloat, beached along a quiet shore. Dozens of shirtless crew members were hard at work, repairing hull damage. Ashore, more than a dozen large tents had been pitched, with over 200 pirates resting and recovering nearby. Guppy's village, inland. Inside a small clinic, Eridar lay wrapped like a mummy on a large bed, propped up on pillows. He grinned through the pain, holding up the latest newspaper. Ha ha ha. The Marines, so damn pathetic, getting stomped in the East Blue of all places, cough cough cough. Captain, don't laugh, you'll tear your wounds again. Millie, sitting beside him, gently stroked his chest, then took the cup from Mina and raised it to his lips. It wasn't surprising that Eridar was so cheerful. The Navy had taken a massive blow, over 2,000 casualties, several high-ranking officers wounded or dead. According to the latest paper, Rear Admiral Evans, a Zoan-type ancient beast, Snowfang Wolf Devil Fruit user, had succumbed to his injuries. Another, Rear Admiral Farlier, had been completely disabled. Eridar, despite being gravely wounded himself, had retained all his limbs and faculties. Once he healed, he'd be back, stronger than ever. Captain, this hit was huge for the Marines, especially Logtown's garrison. The entire command structure was wiped out. Arlen, seated nearby, sneered as he read. It had already been 5 days since the Battle of Logtown. With Eridar unconscious and the crew heavily injured, Arlen had chosen not to push into the Grand Line immediately. Instead, they'd sought refuge on this quiet island to recover and repair the Chris. Charging into the Grand Line with a half-sunk ship and a crew full of wounded would have been suicide. We've taken serious losses too, Dmitri said quietly, sitting at the foot of the bed. We started with 337 crew. After our first bounty battle, we had 326. After Logtown, only 234 remain. Over 30 are critically injured. Nearly 100 more are carrying wounds. The room fell silent. A heavy silence. Then, from the corner, the usually quiet Gorbo spoke up. We chose this life. Anyone who sails as a pirate should be ready to die. To drown in the sea. As long as we die fighting, it won't be in vain. I know, Dmitri said. A rare smile broke through. The Grand Line doesn't care about pity. Only the strong survive. Nearby, Oliver was silently polishing his blade Nagamitsu, one of the 50 skillful grade blades. Without looking up, he suddenly said, I'd bet money my new bounty will be higher than yours. You little. Arlen jumped up, fire in his eyes. Next time I swear I'll outdo you. Oliver gave him a lazy glance, eyes filled with disdain. Maybe, but I've still got 2 centimeters on you. Oliver was 186 centimeters. Arlen was 184 centimeters. Arlen's face turned beet red. With a loud plop, he sat back down, seething in silence. Chapter 59-59, Half a Year. Bang! The new bounty posters just dropped, Captain. The wooden door slammed open. A tall, lean man with hair covering his left eye burst into the room, visibly excited, a stack of bounty posters clutched in his hand. Oh, how much did mine go up by? Aridar's eyes lit up, visibly intrigued. Am I on there? Asked Dmitri. We fought too, right? There better be one for each of us. Millie and Mina crowded in, voices overlapping. Oliver pointed at Arlen and smirked, bet mine's higher than his. Lemme see. Arlen's face darkened as he snatched the stack from the man's hand. Looks like I made the cut too. Gorbo's curious expression brightened as he noticed multiple posters in the pile. First one, Captain of the Chris Pirates Golden Ring, Chris T. Aridar. Impact Fruit User. Bounty, 80 million berries, Arlen read aloud. Yes. Cough, cough. Aridar clenched his fist in celebration. His bounty had doubled. Still far from the big names, but definitely a leap forward. Second, Head of Combat and 1st Division Commander Oliver the Slayer. Dual-wielding swordsman. Bounty, 65 million berries. Arlen shot him a glare. He. Oliver chuckled as he wiped his blades, clearly pleased. Third. Arlen's shoulders slumped, and he muttered, First Mate and 2nd Division Commander Blue Hair, Gilbert Arlen. Bounty, 50 million berries. Oliver immediately grinned like a shark. Told ya. He. The crew started snickering. Oliver, Dmitri, even Millie and Mina joined in. Shut up. Arlen roared, bearing sharp canines. Fourth, Head Chef and 3rd Division Commander Harry L. Gorbo the Mighty Cook. Bounty, 35 million berries. Not bad, Gorbo said with a rare smile curling at his lips. Fifth, Navigator and Gunslinger Miles Dmitri. Bounty, 30 million berries. Ha! Nice work. Dmitri beamed, pumping his fist. He could feel his name beginning to spread. Sixth, twin gunner sisters of the Chris Pirates Millie and Mina. Each with a bounty of 10 million berries. We got one too. Awesome. The sisters squealed and hugged each other tight. Ha ha ha. Not bad at all. Every officer got a bounty. That brings our total bounty to 270 million berries. Cough, cough, cough. Aridar was coughing from excitement, but clearly, he was thrilled. In the original story, Luffy's second bounty was 100 million, but by that point, he had already entered the Grand Line and defeated a warlord of the sea. Even then, only Zoro had joined him on the wanted list at 60 million. That means the Straw Hat Pirates' total bounty on their second round was just 160 million with only 2 members recognized. In contrast, Aridar's Chris Pirates hadn't even entered the Grand Line yet. And already, on their second round of bounties, every major member, including Aridar's twin attendants Millie and Mina, had been listed. A total bounty of 270 million berries that alone made Aridar immensely proud. But Captain, with your injuries, we won't be entering the Grand Line anytime soon, Oliver said, eyeing the bandages on Aridar's chest. Aridar raised a finger and waved it slowly, a calm smirk on his lips. No rush. We've got time. Exactly. We already saw the news in the papers. The Marines are mobilizing on a massive scale. They're making a full sweep of the seas, either wiping out pirates or at least thinning their numbers. The real war between pirates and Marines is just getting started. No need to jump into the Grand Line too soon, Arlen said, sipping from his water glass like he had the whole chessboard figured out. Cough, cough. The Grand Line's split into 2 halves. The second is called the New World. That's where real pirates thrive. It's a stronghold for the strongest, cough. Aridar wheezed, then scanned the room. The world government and the navy are clinging to what they can in the New World, but the 4 emperors won't let them take it easily. A brutal war is coming, and it'll reshape the balance of power for years to come. And because the first half of the Grand Line is still within the Navy's jurisdiction, all pirates there will be under heavy fire. Arlen nodded, chiming in, if we charge in too early, especially after showing off in the Battle of Logue Town, will be prime targets for a navy crackdown. Exactly. The Admirals might not move personally against us yet, not with the monsters in the New World to deal with, but the Marine HQ has plenty of elite Vice Admirals. They might come. Eridar sipped some warm water to soothe his throat. That last battle exposed a few flaws in our crew. We need time to recover and regroup. As long as our officers are here, we won't fall to the Navy's elite. Damn right, Oliver added. When the time comes, we'll expand. The brothers who've made it this far with us, they're the foundation. We just need time to train, sync up, and build unity. Half a year. We'll enter the Grand Line in half a year. Eridar and Arlen continued discussing their plans, heads close, deep in strategy. Oliver and the others kept nodding. Maybe they didn't catch everything, but the gist was clear. Quick question, Oliver raised a hand. So, we're leaving in 6 months. We had the same question, Gorbo and Dmitri nodded furiously like pecking chicks. Eridar swept his gaze across them and said coolly, yes. And in that time, you'd all better train your asses off. Got a problem with that? Nope. No way. None at all. The group instantly went pale and shook their heads. Eridar grinned. Good. Chapter 60-60, Reverse Mountain. Time flowed like water. Half a year had passed in the blink of an eye. Dark clouds loomed overhead, streaked with crackling serpents of lightning. Thunder roared like the sky itself was tearing open. Ferocious winds howled, churning towering waves across the vast sea. Amidst this chaos sailed a colossal three-masted warship, its wolf-head prow slicing through the storm-tossed waters. Sheets of rain poured from the sky, pelting the deck with relentless force. Inside the captain's quarters on the second floor of the stern cabin, lights blazed brightly against the gloom. This damn weather! We've only been at sea for 2 days, and we're already in a storm. Seated on the couch, Eridar muttered as he glanced out the rain-smeared window, visibly annoyed. Glug. Oliver, sprawled lazily nearby, took a swig from his bottle before muttering with a shrug, this one's nothing. Still better than that once-in-a-decade storm we got caught in last time. The captain's just scared, Arlen said matter-of-factly. He's a devil fruit user. If he falls into the sea, it's game over. He's afraid of drowning. Gorbo added with a deadpan tone. Pa-pa-ha-ha. Everyone burst into laughter. Even the usually composed Millie and Mina couldn't help doubling over. Arlen, the most dramatic of them all, laughed so hard he fell off the couch and hit the floor. Who's scared? Eridar snapped, flustered. Damn it, why'd they have to say the quiet part out loud? To be fair, Eridar used to know how to swim. Not great, but well enough to splash around with his 2 best brothers every summer at the pool and maybe sneak some glances at bikini girls. But ever since coming to the world of One Piece and eating a devil fruit, swimming had become a death sentence. He tried once. Just once. Nearly drowned. Oliver had to dive in and pull him out. That incident shook him to his core. He hated how powerless it felt, like all his strength had been stripped away. He had power, but couldn't use it. That helplessness, he loathed it. And then there was that monstrous storm, the once-in-a-decade one. Terrified him. Back on Earth, he'd always weathered storms from the safety of land. But that one? He was on a ship, in the middle of the sea. If he had been even slightly weaker back then, he'd have ended up part of the ocean. Still chuckling, Dmitri finally sobered and said reassuringly, Captain, relax. We'll be out of the storm's range soon. We're close to Reverse Mountain. Reverse Mountain? Arlen asked, confused. Seeing Dmitri about to explain, Eridar cut in with a smug smirk, what, you don't know that? Idiot. All right then, Captain, Arlen replied with a shrug. Why don't you explain it? TCH. Eridar stood up and said with mock pride, listen up. Reverse Mountain is a bizarre and perilous peak that marks the gateway to the Grand Line. Oliver frowned. I get that it leads to the Grand Line, but what makes it so dangerous? Dmitri pulled out a rough sea chart and pinned it to the wall, pointing as he spoke. Reverse Mountain has 5 rivers, forming an X-shaped system. 4 of the rivers flow up the mountain, each connected to one of the 4 blues, East Blue, West Blue, South Blue, and North Blue. The 5th flows downward into the Grand Line. The top of the mountain? Oliver asked in disbelief. Our ship has to climb a mountain. Exactly, Dmitri said solemnly. The current flows upward. Reverse Mountain is both the beginning of the Grand Line and, in a way, its end. Because on the other side of this mountain, lies the entrance to the New World. And the end of the New World is none other than Laugh Tale. The resting place of the pirate King Roger's great treasure One Piece. Eridar smiled, something unreadable glinting in his eyes. Wait, Gorbo cut in. Aren't there other routes? Don't the Marines use this path too? Unless you can climb the Red Line itself, which is a vertical continent, you'd have to go through Reverse Mountain, Dmitri replied. Even if you managed to get over the Red Line somehow, your ship wouldn't make it. The Marines likely use a different route across the red line. Can't you go through the calm belt? Arlen asked. No wind, no currents. Regular ships can't move at all in the calm belt, Eridar said darkly. And that's not even the worst part. The calm belt is the nesting ground of the Sea King's massive creatures, some as large as islands. The deeper you go in, the bigger they get. Sea King nesting ground. Thousands of Sea Kings. Each one bigger than the last. Some as big as entire islands. Everyone froze. Even Oliver, usually fearless, looked like his scalp went numb. Island-sized Sea Kings. What the hell were you supposed to do, stab their toenail? Captain. A light off the bow. The lookout's shout snapped everyone to attention. Let's go check it out, Eridar said. That must be the lighthouse on Reverse Mountain. Throwing on a raincoat, Eridar led the way out. The others followed, grabbing their coats and heading to the deck. At the ship's prow, the crew stood in the downpour, raincoats flapping in the wind. Even the sailors below deck had come up to witness the moment. And then they saw it. A red mountain stretched into the skies, its peak lost in the clouds. Compared to it, even the massive Chris was just an ant. Carved into the center was an unnatural waterway, flowing upward like a staircase. On either side, stone railings were etched with ancient, swirling patterns. It was awe-inspiring. So that's Reverse Mountain, Eridar said, raising his spyglass. Incredible. The seawater, it's really flowing up. Arlen gasped. No, something's off, Oliver muttered. The current's too strong. The ocean was pulling them forward like a magnet. The Chris was locked into the upward stream, unable to steer away. Oliver gripped the helm, but it wouldn't budge. Haha, then let's go straight ahead. Eridar laughed loudly, but inside, he was overwhelmed. He turned to the sky and shouted with all his heart. I will become a warlord of the sea. I will be the one who sets the rules. Inspired, the rest of the crew raised their voices. I'll make my name known across the world. Arlen, I'll become the world's greatest swordsman. Oliver. I'll find the legendary sea all blue. Gorbo. I'll sail across every ocean. Dimitri. We'll be the greatest sharpshooting sisters on the sea. Millie and Mina. Their voices roared skyward, louder than the thunder, louder than the wind. And at that moment they realized something. The storm had passed.